I was going to try and get a amazing preview to make sure it worked, but it wasn't. It's not going to do that. So let's just click the live button and see what happens. We may even have a live stream at the end of all this.
That would be ideal.
Hopefully it'll pop up on the thing.
It's working. I see a wheel.
Oh, there's a wheel.
Look, Mom, I'm on TV.
There's a wheel. But is it going to actually make a live stream happen?
How cool is this? Yeah, I see it.
Oh, is it working?
I believe so. I can't check the sound.
There we are. It's working.
Nice.
Oh,
hey, Dave.
How's the audio, everybody?
That would be ideal.
I may have completely messed this up. Hopefully it'll pop up on the thing.
It's working. I see a wheel.
There we go. The audio seems to be fine. Excellent. Right. Good evening, everyone. I am, of course, Bad Tempered Badger, and I'm here today with this fine gentleman here.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. So, who are you?
I'm just a guy in a box with words that I want people to hear that they don't necessarily want to hear, but they're going to hear them anyways, as long as they stay in this live chat. But other than that, I am Jim Majors. Some may know me as the ex-CEO of Atheist Republic. Some may know me as the Mustache guy. Some may know me as the Twitter warriors, or the debating guy on Modern Day Debate. But I am all of those people in one. I'm greater than the Trinity. I'm whatever you call that.
Outstanding. You get the whole package with the USA.
Yeah.
All right. So why don't we talk about one of what's your sort of most recent project that you've been doing in the online space?
Well, with Easter coming up, there's a lot of apologetics regarding the resurrection. So that is something that I've been doing a lot of, which is something that I do a lot of anyways. And for an Old Testament studies major, that's, some people would think that's kind of strange, that I'm so infatuated with the New Testament, but I'd like to be well-rounded.
Mm-hmm. And to go through, that sentence fell apart, didn't it? So, like to have a good approach from lots of different angles of the sort of the biblical business.
Yeah, well, I don't, tend to debate Jews all that much or debate against Judaism. It seems like most of the apologists out there are Christians. It seems for the most part, most Jews are perfectly content with being Jews and nobody messing with them, and apologists kind of want to climb to the top of a skyscraper and beat their chest and say I'm right. And so I feel obligated to be the World War II little fighter pilots flying around and shooting at King Kong.
Well, I think it's definitely good to, if you're going to be countering the apologetics in that kind of sense, it's definitely good to have a good knowledge of the well, that's fallen apart as well. It's good to have a good knowledge of kind of the background of what the person is likely to bring up during a discussion.
Sure. No, I'm sorry. Was that a question?
No, that was a statement.
Then
but
yes,
also
I absolutely
a question.
agree.
If you want to flow on from that, that's also a question.
I agree with you as a statement. If it was a question, then I would need you to repeat it because I didn't understand it.
All right. Well, let's move on to this as a question then. So you mentioned that it seems to be mostly Christian apologists rather than most other things, and I take it you're mostly sort of debating with people in the Western world.
Yes, very much so. America, some in the UK, but very, very few in anywhere but the US.
So, is it sort of deliberately trying to avoid US ones, or is it just that
it's not necessarily an avoidance, but rather it's at the forefront. It's very it's a very prevalent thought for me. It's a very real and present danger to me, Christianity. And so I guess, you fix the problem in your house before you go to help your neighbor, so to speak.
Hmm. Um. Oh, I lost the thing. Right. So, what was you mentioned doing debates? Was it modern day debate? You said.
Yeah.
Yeah. What? Who have you most recently debated?
My most recent debate was with S.J. Thomason, actually, on the subject of the resurrection. It's a great debate. I highly recommend people check that out.
Excellent. Dear old SJ. I have debated it once actually myself. It was
Yeah,
one of the few
yeah.
debates that I've done online. Was
I actually saw it. I was rather impressed with your performance. You
oh,
you did
fabulous.
very well, which is probably not saying a whole lot, but it's saying something.
Excellent. Well, I quite enjoyed the discussion anyway. I thought it went quite well, and I thought
Same.
it was quite pleasant as well. There wasn't any sort of
Right.
what am I looking for? There wasn't any. Uh, it wasn't
That's how
confrontational. You know, it was a discussion. It was a discussion kind of debate rather than like a shouty debate.
most of mine and SJ's interactions have been
Mm,
in live chats or debates. I've debated her several times. But this last one, it just really seemed necessary to hammer home a few certain points. And so I may have done that a bit too eagerly and may have overstepped some lines that could be considered friendly. So I think that it's going to be the last debate SJ and I have for a while. Not
mm-hmm,
any decision of mine. It's just kind of the way I feel things going. She's very much so limited her interactions with me.
mm. Was that? I think I missed a little bit there. Is that because of how you reckon you came across to her, or because of how she came across to you, or what kind of happened there?
Yes, for those who watch me debate, I used to be a, a Pentecostal pastor, so evangelical, very fundamental, very sure of myself,
Hmm.
uh, and so I realized that the best approach with Christians isn't always a hammer fisted approach, like somebody like Aaron Ra or maybe Christopher Hitchens, rest in peace, that great man, may have done. So I tend to be much more gracious and to give a lot of leniency in debates with Christians. I will sacrifice certain small um, uh, potential situations where I can throw in a gotcha
Uh-huh.
and lose the rest of the conversation. I'm willing to usually overlook those for the sake of getting to the end and getting to the main point that I'm trying to get across instead of just hammering them on every point. But this debate, it really deemed necessary, like I said, to really hammer home a few certain um, crucial errors that she makes in her arguments.
Hmm. And you reckon that may not have been taken quite as well as in past debates?
I know it wasn't. Poor woman. She was very flustered. She actually said that Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a camel.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, and then said that Jesus went down on a camel, verbatim. I'm not sure what she meant by that. Well, I think I know what she meant by that. I think she meant down to Jerusalem, but it would have been up to and it wide down. I don't know. I don't know. I know that she was flustered and that she was not expecting me to just brutally deconstruct her arguments
Mm. So she was kind of thinking it would be a little bit more
like the
cordial.
usual.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
just
right.
a friendly discussion and me give her certain graces and leniencies and allow her to get by with things that other people wouldn't let her get by. And so I was actually kind of sad that when she brought up points that I normally would just skip over, and I was like, well, I gotta just get, I gotta get this one. I've gotten a lot of criticism on my debates that I'm too nice, that I'm
Hmm.
too that I let them get away with too much.
Yeah, that's something that is actually I've been told as well at times. Actually, is that even though my title says bad tempered, I tend to just let people talk and
Right.
talk themselves through their point and just kind of ask questions to lead them on to the next thing rather than to pick holes in everything. Just because
Well,
the most recent person I had on, I think it was Darth Dawkins
oh,
or someone similar of that nature. I'm pretty sure it was Darth Dawkins actually, but we had a whole discussion and or was it? No, it wasn't Darth Dawkins. It was Jesus is Lord was the last one I had on.
oh, potato, potato.
Yeah, that chappie. He was. I felt the best approach with him was to just essentially just ask questions to get his perspective and just let him talk, because as he was talking, I was there going, okay, that doesn't.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
it all
I
depends
thought
on
it
what your
was just
goal
kind of
is.
just to
You,
let him go and let people kind of just listen and go, yeah,
I
that
I
doesn't make
mean,
sense.
if your goal is to win the debate, if that is your ultimate goal going in is to win, then yeah, being hyperbolic, being, um, abrasive, being, attacking every point, it necessarily interrupting, not being very gracious with your interlocutor,
Hmm.
then yeah, it might be necessary to do those things in order to win. But if your goal, like mine, and I assume that yours is most of the time, is to uh, rather have them explore their beliefs and me get to know them better, in order for me to better attack
Hmm.
their arguments, because some people think that uh, there's like a guidebook out there of atheist debates where, okay, if they say this, then you say this, and if they say this, then you say this, and these are the arguments and these are the counter arguments. And that's beneficial if you want to win, if you're wanting the gotcha moments. But when you're trying to get somebody to discover their religion, repeating something that they've heard in both preparation for the debate and in every other atheist debate that they've seen is not it, it it's not productive, in my opinion.
No, I tend to be of a similar opinion actually in regard to discussions and debates, and that you don't really get anywhere in if you actually want to convince the person you're talking with of anything. I don't think you're going to get there just by shouting at them. I think
Yeah, exactly. They will shut themselves down and they'll automatically they will hedge themselves into their little trench to just dig that hole, put their helmet on, and just sit there.
yeah.
And it really, in most cases, it increases their conviction because they say, well, they're attacking this so viciously, then I must be right.
Mm. And I think that's an issue that I come across on. I've seen you have a couple of back and forths on Twitter. I've been doing the same. Twitter seems to be a very sort of strong platform for that to happen. Just for people to entrench into their mindsets and their arguments and not actually listen to their interlocutors at all.
My sister's in the live chat.
Oh, well, very pleased to see it. Dear, I'm getting messages all over the place here. That's quite excellent. Very pleased to have you in the chat there. Oh, I've
Uh,
lost the thing with your face on it now. There it is.
I know, but Badger looks so much more classy than me. I've been building fence all day, and I told Badger, I was like, if you want to do this, like I am dog tired, and I'm not getting pretty for this.
I don't mind. I tend to just bumble around in my smoking jacket all day.
Same. Every jacket's a smoking jacket.
Well, if it is, if you smoke in it. Um, right. I was going to ask you something else. Twitter. Let's go with Twitter for a minute,
Oh
because
boy.
as as I'm sure many people in the chat know, Twitter's a bit of a mess.
It is, especially in the atheist slash apologist realm. It's almost like a different. It's like the dark web of Twitter.
A little bit, a little bit. I tend to refer to it because they keep trying to put a title on the community in quotes. And they started with kind of the atheist community, and then realised that quite a few of the people linked to it, involved with it, aren't actually atheists. So there's polytheists, there's various apologists, there's all kinds of stuff. So the title I came up with for it was "The Discussions and Debates Community, sometimes centered around the topic of belief or disbelief in religions rather."
Yeah, it's very it
very
covers everything. It's
it
very
covers
very
everything,
broad.
but it's very overly verbose.
What about the atheist community and Steven Steen?
Well, that covers quite a big chunk of it, yeah. But Twitter, it's a very interesting platform. It's you've got there's sort of a few distinct sections of it that I've noticed. There's the people who are just trying to have chats with their mates. There's the people who are trying to have like in-depth discussions on topics, and there's brands advertising themselves, and there's politicians who are also brands advertising themselves.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So what is your kind of main? What do you do when you're on the Twitters generally?
So I first got my Twitter when I was CEO of Atheist Republic. It was my old one at the Jim Majors, which I am hoping to get back soon. I'm in discussions with Twitter trying to get it back, but it got hacked and got taken away. Had I know it had over 1,000 followers. Maybe I had a couple thousand, but then I had to start all over, so that was kind of depressing. But the whole reason I started was just for Atheist Republic, was just for like kissing hands and shaking babies, basically. And I wasn't really into the conversations. I was still very much a Facebooker, but I've slowly evolved from Facebook. In fact, I'm rarely on Facebook anymore, and now I'm mostly on Twitter. And I usually spend my time on Twitter engaging with Christians and engaging with scholars in fields of history, early Christianity, biblical studies, just a variety of studies revolving around the ancient Near East and first century to, I'd say, like 5th century Christianity.
Okay, so a lot of interaction with various apologists and such, and other believers.
The vast majority, yes.
Yeah, I've been doing. I do a little bit of that as well, and I find that a lot of them, they will bring up sort of the pre-written arguments, but if you try to engage them on the what those arguments are about, a lot of them sort of won't do that, or they will try to avoid it.
Yeah, I agree. And Twitter is a great spot for apologists because it allows them a spot to get out of a corner that they would otherwise be stuck in had they been in a live discussion.
Yeah. And I find it also, from my perspective, it's very helpful for having discussions because it's text based. It gives me time to actually look stuff up. So if I'm not sure about something, I can go and check.
Right. Yeah, it does allow for that opportunity, but that goes both ways, and I find that tends to bring out the worst in people. And I'm not saying this applies to you, but a lot of people will, they will make themselves appear much more knowledgeable about a subject than they actually are, because they have the additional time to go and read the first page of search results on Google.
Yeah, I may have done that from time to time, but I generally try to say if that's what I'm doing. Or
Oh, I'm sure we're all guilty of it, but there's some people who make a
yeah,
living and a blog, Christian-apologist.com, out of it, and it's not becoming.
yeah. No, what I try to do is, if I'm in a discussion and I have to look something up, and it's something that I didn't know about before or didn't have any kind of background or knowledge in, I generally say something like, according to a quick search, uh,
Well, yeah, and that's honest.
just
That's
to make the
completely
point that
honest.
I didn't know that I had to check, but this is what
Right.
I think based on the information I've just found from my search. If you've got more accurate information, tell me.
Yes, and that gives you certain immunity from cases where people would be like, "Oh, actually, that's not correct," and you can say, "Oh, well, like I
Oh,
said, it was a
well,
quick
thanks for that
cursory
information. Yeah,
search. As a prima facie, this is what I came up with. If that's different, feel free to present the information. I'm open."
yeah. That's kind of my approach as well in terms of that. I'm not there to. I don't have these discussions to win as such. I'm not very competitive in that sense. I'm in it to both learn and teach if I think if I have anything that people don't already know. I want to find out more and improve my own knowledge of things, and if I in the process of that I can help other people learn stuff, that's great.
Absolutely. Well, a lot of people learn better like that. Like it sounds strange, but a lot of people learn through teaching.
Yeah, I agree. I've definitely developed a better understanding of things by trying to explain them to other people and then realizing, oh, that's I actually do know that, or I
Right.
actually don't know
And,
that,
and,
and I
and
need to
there's
check
and
that.
there's many times where you have to stick your foot in your mouth and be like, "Oh, I didn't know that."
Yeah.
I mean, eating crow is one of the great things about being an atheist is that you don't have to be ashamed about eating crow. Being when you're an apologist, it's almost like a Jew eating pork. It's just
Mm.
like you might like bacon, but you're not going to do it in front of everybody.
No, no, probably best not to. Got a couple of comments from the chat here. There's one for me, which is, are cats good for crayfish bait? I'm not sure. I haven't tried it, but
Hmm.
I suppose that would
I,
depend on the size of the cat.
if we're talking about catfish, then yes. If we're talking about cats, then no. But cats are good crawfish bait.
Hmm. And the next question, which is for you, from Rory Herbert. Oh, I forgot the first one was Mark Caesar. Rory Herbert asks, what does Jim think about the Pope asking God to stop the coronavirus, in quotes, with his hand?
Oh boy. With God's hand, I'm guessing. I haven't heard about this.
Uh,
I knew that he went and prayed at San Marcello al Corso in Rome, uh, and for it to stop. I guess it has a cross there that was um, used in like certain processions, and it was supposed to be miraculous or whatever. But I hadn't heard about him asking God to stop it with his hand. But I don't know. I guess I would have questions about the anthropomorphic qualities of God.
because that implies that God has hands.
Right. That are on the end of his arms that he hugs you with, that are against his bosom that you can, nestle against, and under his white beard and his nostrils that like the smell of blood and burning flesh.
Yeah, yeah. Well, presumably he enjoys the smell because he kept getting people to do it.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't like a good barbecue?
Well,
Like not nobody's ever like walked past a barbecue and been like, "Oh, fucking gross." Like even I mean, if you're vegan and you thought that it was totally disgusting, then correct me. But I think even most vegans would walk by a barbecue, even though they're disgusted, and just be like, "Fucking awful what they're doing," but it smells delicious.
mm, yep. I would definitely agree with you on there, and you're not gonna find me, given the opportunity, passing up a barbecue.
No, not at all.
Um,
But yeah, if anybody that has a question, feel free to ask
yeah,
anything. I'm open.
I've put the call in the chat for questions. I expect there'll be some more incoming at some point soon. But while we're on the topic of the Old Testament God, you mentioned that you are that's kind of an area of study for you. Was that the sort of academic study area that you
Yes.
I'm
Yeah,
just
I'm
waffling
pursuing a
words out my
doctorate
mouth
in
now.
yeah, I'm pursuing a doctorate in biblical studies with a focus in Old Testament studies.
Hmm, Um, what's got you into that originally?
Well, originally when I was preaching, when I was really interested um, in Christianity for religious reasons. Um, so just furthering my knowledge of the Bible, stuff that I knew that I wouldn't get in my church, stuff that I reached a certain point where there was nobody in the church that I would feel comfortable going to and asking questions about the Bible from, and just because I was pretty confident at a somewhat young age, just about 14 or 15, that I was already more knowledgeable than anybody else in my church. And I don't think that I was wrong to this day. And so it was like a furthering education at first. And
Mm-hmm.
even though I became an atheist, through my studies, I still have a passion for learning. I still have a passion for the Bible. I still like the Bible, still love the Bible. It's my favorite book. It
Mm-hmm.
will probably always be my favorite book. Um, but it's the meaning behind the education has changed. When at first it was pursuing learning and
Yeah.
pursuing knowledge in order to increase my relationship with God, it eventually turned into a decrease in my understanding of who God was and what that means for Christianity, and an increase in the contextual meaning behind the text, especially when it comes to like the New Testament Gospels, is something I was early on very very interested in, and so but then it shifted from trying to increase my knowledge and conviction, and I would even say righteousness, by trying to learn about the Bible, and it just turned into a scholarly journey of, I guess you could say, still trying to discover God. I guess you could say that in my studies, I'm still searching for God, but it's not producing the results that I hoped it would.
Nah, well, not the results you hoped for originally, anyway.
Right, right.
But would you say it's been an interesting journey?
Oh, most definitely. It's been the most wonderfully interesting journey of my life. We all have many little mini journeys that occur parallel and overlap within our lives. And my journey through the Bible and through learning, it's just it's my favorite thing. It's my something I look forward to it,
Mm-hmm.
with great anticipation, and something that I look back on with great fondness.
Yeah. Um, so have you got sort of a plan for something that you're going to do with it once you did you say you were still studying for the
Yes,
eventual
I'm
thing?
I'm pursuing my doctorate. I'm a PhD student,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully this time next year I'll be graduating. It's not looking very promising, but I'm still trying to stick to that deadline. Um, but it's I don't know. Uh, so what do I want to do with it? I definitely want to teach. I definitely want to share the things that I've learned. I think that there's a problem with inaccessibility when it comes to biblical scholars, and I feel like that
Mm-hmm.
the only biblical scholars that are accessible and that are prominent and that are public and publicly voicing their positions uh, are hyperbolic. Um, they become famous over their, I don't want to say cliches, but they could become famous over, they become famous by repeating certain arguments that are appealing to people, and to the point so to where they build a brand around these arguments. And I don't want to do that, because I want to be able to have the capacity to teach and have the capacity to learn at the same time. And I think that once you decide that you are right about something and you start building a brand around it, I think that that's whenever you start trapping yourself with a cognitive bias.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from there. By the way, apologies if there's any crackly noises. I have a microphone clipped to me, so every time I turn my head, I think I'm knocking it.
It's fine. Excuse me if I cough. I'm drinking a Corona.
Outstanding. Right.
That's awful. That's awful.
Critical Cripple wants to know Dr. Majors or Dr. Jim?
I like Dr. Majors, but I feel like that seems like too medically.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking Dr. Jim is the way to go, but Dr. Jim just kind of sounds like, like somebody who, I don't know, like a backwoods vet, maybe. I don't know.
Well, once you become, once you have doctor in your title, any meeting you go to becomes a doctor's appointment.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I had an appointment the other day, and when I went there, I was surprised when he told me to drop my pants, and he put a glove on and put a finger, where. It was the weirdest dentist appointment I've ever had in my life. I'll probably never go back there.
What was the sort of the main weird thing about it, do you reckon?
I don't know. Just can't put my finger on it.
Was it just something that felt off the whole time? Would you?
Yeah, it definitely felt off. Darth Calculus says, are you referring to believing or disbelieving scholars like Bart Ehrman or Michael Heiser? Yes, them and many more. I'm talking about William Lane Craig. I'm talking about Lee Strobel. Anybody who has built a brand or an empire around a core ideology that is not only potentially flawed, but is already proven to be flawed, and they stick to it.
Yeah. I what's that guy called? He debated with Hitchens once. William Lane Craig, is that the guy?
Mike Licona?
No, he's got Craig in his name. Is it William something?
William Lane Craig.
That's the chap. Is he the guy with the Kalam thing?
Yes, the Kalam cosmological. Well, he has a modified version of the Kalam, which is what most Christians use, and he thinks is infallible, but it's something that he sticks to very closely. I'll actually be on Steve McRae's channel tomorrow talking about the Kalam cosmological and debunking it, offering my anti-apologetics.
Right. I do have a short video on my channel actually where I do like a counter to that, which is probably far less complicated and insightful than yours, but it's the thing that makes me think that argument doesn't hold any water. Well, I had a thing I was going to lead on to that. Oh, that was it. That chappie, William Lane Craig. Do you reckon? Would you describe him as one of the apologists or individuals who is more of a brand name kind of now? In terms of he's got that, he's known for that argument, and that's what he goes back to, and he doesn't really.
Yes, just like Lee Strobel and Miracles, just like Cold Case Christianity guy and his Detective Jesus. What is his name? It's right on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah. I think I know what you mean, but I can't. I
don't know.
I'm not sure. I think I know what you mean now.
But Bart Ehrman actually, I think, is probably one of the people who are on the lower side of that spectrum, in that he hasn't really built a brand over any one argument that I can really think of. I mean, I can think of several arguments that he makes, but none that I would say that he is has concreted himself into.
Mm.
I know he's really big on like the synoptic problem and exploring the parallels in the synoptics, but I mean, other than that, maybe authorship, but he's not wrong about
Yeah.
it.
Well, there's a few arguments I tend to come back to in discussions, but I'm trying not to become kind of set in stone with them, because if somebody does actually provide a good counter to them, I do want to be able to go, oh yeah, that makes sense, then move on.
My problem is I tend to get stuck on certain anti-apologetics, like things like the minimal facts argument, especially when it comes to like the martyrdom of the apostles and extra biblical, what some people call hostile sources. Those are arguments that I like to argue against quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't always use the same material just because there's so much material there. I don't think you could ever use it in any one argument, but I do tend to stick to fighting certain arguments, such as the minimal facts argument, the Kalam cosmological,
Mm-hmm.
um, other things like that.
All right. Well, there's a couple of things I tend to keep coming back to. There's one which there's an idea I've had in my head for quite some time, but it it's one that I haven't really heard any coherent opposition to, which is, to me, it seems that if a god, if there is a god that created the universe and rules over the universe, that is all powerful and all knowing, you can't really claim that there is free will, and that actions are, any event that takes place is not God's responsibility ultimately.
Yeah, and that's when you find that there's about 50 different ways to split free will, and people will finagle that to fit their argument. But I don't think anybody means free will in the sense that uh, you are free to do whatever you will.
Hmm. Well, the issue that I have there becomes, I think it generally comes up when people are assigning responsibility, and
Mm.
people like to assign responsibility and credit for beneficial or good things that happen to God, but they don't like to do that same thing if something negative happens, even though presumably if God is all powerful and all knowing, everything that happens has to either be so terminology's fallen out of my brain. It has to either be
Mhm.
um, through direct action or omission, direct action or inaction. There we go. God's responsibility, because either God has said that, either God has made something happen deliberately, or God has known something was going to happen and deliberately chosen not to prevent it.
Right. Which he would be
So
obligated to
yeah.
do in a world with sin. Because if we're not created with the ability to choose to do what we will, including sin,
Mm-hmm.
then that world is nothing more than God protecting me from sin and from evil.
Yeah.
And by not giving us the ability to choose to do whatever we wish, whatever we will, then he literally robs us of the opportunity to make that choice, whether it
Mm.
places me in sin's path or not.
Yeah. So in my opinion, and my view on it is, if God is all powerful, so can influence any event in any way that he wants, and if he's all knowing, so knows everything that is going to happen at any stage throughout this plan, then anything that happens, good or bad, is entirely God's decision, because he's either set it up to happen or not prevented it. So let's say that a tsunami happens and causes untold pain and misery, or let's say a viral outbreak happens and causes untold pain and misery. That is God's responsibility, as he did not prevent it.
Absolutely. Yep. Up to and including the sin nature. Uh, there was nobody who dictated to God that he must curse all of humanity with the sin nature because of the actions of his first creations. This
Mm-hmm.
didn't happen like the second, the third, or the 10th generation down. Like right out of the gate, it screwed up. And God's ultimate plan is to what? Is to
Mm-hmm.
damn all of for all of eternity, all of humanity after Adam and Eve. You know, to me, uh, that seems like that's a choice that he made that
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't necessary. In fact, I don't think that it's necessary for there to be evil at all. Some people say it's necessary for there to be evil in order for there to be good, and there has to be sin in order for people to be able to choose to not
Yeah.
sin.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but what does that matter? Well,
Well.
why is it necessary to not sin? Well, why
Mm-hmm.
is sinning bad? Who made sinning bad? God did.
Yeah, well, there's an argument that I've heard that hardship increases, it builds character, and it is beneficial in some ways because it allows you to become a better person to overcome adversity. But let's assume, for the sake of argument, that God set that in motion for that purpose. Why did He build people to require that? There's, if He, it seems that the reason he would build people to require that is so that they have to suffer in order to progress. And why, if he's an all-loving God, would he want them to suffer rather than why would he just not make them with that requirement?
It's almost as if he cannot create a creation that could ultimately return to him without there being temptation present in their life. Like, for instance, we were created with the biological drive to fornicate, to reproduce. And
Mm-hmm.
ever since I was 14 years old, I've wanted to stick this thing in anything even remotely wet and attractive. And yet that is completely against God's desire for us. In fact, it's against one of the 10 commandments.
Well,
Um,
it is if you
but
believe that.
that's how we are biologically. This isn't a sin nature. This is a biological impulse.
Mhm. So why do you set it up that way? Now, this is kind of, or this and all the previous things we brought up is the point in the discussion where the apologists will tend to say something along the lines of, well, if you don't believe in God, why are you coming up with all these arguments against him? And my general view on that is because I'm talking to you and you believe. I am trying to convince you, or convince people who listen to you, that it doesn't make sense. So I'm trying to deal with your position rather than my own.
Mhm.
Yours not being you in this case, but being them.
Right, right. No, I agree completely.
Hmm. Um. Right. Let's just have a little look in the old chat. Oh, critical cripple wants to know, how's your heart doing?
My heart is great. I'm still on medication. The last time that they checked, it's closing up just fine on its own. It started off the size of the head of a pencil eraser,
Hmm.
and now it's barely noticeable. So it's doing much better. I Every now and then when I get my blood pressure up, it does get kind of hard to breathe, and I am cycling on and off antibiotics because I'm still having a problem with my pericardium swelling. So
Hmm.
they're trying to get behind that. But I'm doing much better. I'm not going to die today.
Well, that's definitely good to hear. Um, so is it sort of a long-term thing, or is it more of a
Uh,
more
It was
short-term?
kind of like it was like a freak accident thing that should have been short term, but the damage that it caused is it just takes time.
All right. So it came on quite
But
suddenly, but it's
not long
made it,
term.
it came on quite suddenly, but it's become an ongoing thing since then. Is that the sort of situation?
Right. Yeah. It's ongoing in that treatment is required, but
Hmm.
it's not ongoing in the threat of a heart attack sense.
I see. Um, let's see. What else can I ask you about today? Well, the title says mustache chat, so I suppose I need to bring up the mustache.
Oh man.
So tell me a little bit about the mustache.
I couldn't grow facial hair until I was 19. My first year in the military, I didn't
Mm.
have to shave during boot camp, and so I can't grow a beard. Like I don't have connecting sideburns, so I
Yeah.
don't grow a beard. And I learned one day that before I shaved, I was like, "Hey, my mustache is pretty full. Let's capitalize
Let's
on
go with
that."
that.
And yeah, here we are. It developed a mind of its own and was deified in 2009, and it's kind of become a uh part of online atheist culture. I think I like to think.
Well, it's definitely a very impressive item of facial hair. It's
Why? Thank you,
I have admired it for a good while now.
thank you, sir. Thank you.
Now, I've seen you do kind of a curled or a shaped thing with it before. Is that something that you enjoy experimenting with, or do you have kind of like a set shape you like it to be?
What do you mean, like the way I shape my mustache?
Yeah, like um,
Oh, so this is like just like post shower, like no
yeah.
wax or anything. So it's not very curly or anything, but it
Mm.
does kind of lay in the general direction. But yeah, when I put wax in it, it tends to do the little curl thing. Yeah,
Okay, so is that kind of do you put the curl in deliberately, or does it just happen by itself?
it depends on if I'm going to be eating a sandwich or an apple.
Ah, so it's kind of a
Yeah,
functional curl.
yeah, it is. It is a functional curl. Yeah, it doubles as a key ring holder too. I don't lose my keys as often.
Excellent. So did you kind of just dangle them on the end?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Kind of, I have to balance them out, but yeah, it's not so bad.
Oh, outstanding. I'd imagine I would imagine it does, but I'd like to know, does it tend to come up in conversation? Where is it sort of a conversation starter or a topic that often happens?
Very much so. I've never been approached so much in public, other than like if I go to like an atheist event, I'll get approached quite a bit. But if I'm just out in public, just nobody, just I'm just Joe Jim, out there shopping in Walmart or whatever, Costco, and I'll have people come up to me out of the blue, literally every time I'm out, and be like, "I love your mustache, man. It's a great mustache." I'm like, "Thank you." At first it was awkward, and I was like,
Yeah.
who asks people, like, who tells people they have a great mustache? And then I start looking around, and I'm like, there's a severe mustache deficiency in
There is.
America.
There definitely is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, is that something that you think needs to be improved on, or are you more comfortable being sort of a standout individual with a moustache?
I I mean, I am content carrying this torch for everyone. Um, but it wouldn't hurt for somebody else to share the load, so to speak, if they are up to it.
Is it a particularly heavy item of facial attribute there?
I mean, how many mustaches do you see?
Well, in around here, one,
Hmm.
and it's a very excellent one. It's on your face.
Oh well, oh shucks. No, but I mean, you rarely see, and I it sounds like so braggadocious and conceited, but you just don't see good mustaches anymore. Like either look like you drive a white paneled van,
Mm.
or you look like you're getting ready to take over Germany, and there is no like happy, like I don't want to say happy medium because there's nothing happy in between a pedophile and Hitler,
Oh
but
dear.
um there's no positive mustache representation, I guess. I'm taking back the once and widely
Mm,
denigrated
mm.
form of facial hair that is a mustache.
Well, there's a little bit more of it these days. Like there's certain characters in certain things that get the moustache and they make it a whole thing. Like you've seen Parks and Recreation, for example.
Yeah, I mean, you do see it a lot, and I hate to judge, but it's rarely seen without being accompanied by skinny jeans, and that's just
Ah,
not my
yeah.
thing.
No, I'm not into skinny jeans at all. A friend of
Are
mine
you talking
is
about Ron? Not
Ron
Ron
Swan.
Burgundy,
Ron
Ron
Swanson is
Swanson.
the chap I'm on about, yeah, from
Yes,
Parks and Recreation.
Ron
He's
Swanson
not a
is
skinny
my
jeans
spirit
guy.
animal, and I've had more than one person tell me that I'm a cross between Ron Swanson and Jim from The Office.
Which one's Jim in The Office?
Chris Pratt,
Oh, he's in both, is
the really goofy one.
he? Outstanding. But I tend to find that
Oh wait,
I have been described
no,
as
it's Parks and Rec, not The Office.
no, I know
Sorry.
what you mean anyway. That yeah, I have been described. Do you know the characters of Parks and Rec fairly well?
Yeah.
I have sometimes been described as somehow a cross between Ron Swanson and April Ludgate.
Ooh, I see it.
You know, just kind of, I've got
Little sassy,
I've got a
little
bit of
snarky,
yeah, I've got a bit of
a lot
that
of
kind of
bacon.
just stoic thing going on at times with the just I'm going to leave so I don't have to be here anymore kind of thing, and
Yep.
also a bit of the April Ludgate with the hey, I'm April Ludgate. I like stuff and things.
I I love Ron's circle desk, his desk of avoidance.
Oh yeah.
He just sits in the middle of it, and people try to get his attention, and he
It spirals around, yeah.
just spins away from them.
I now back to the previous thing you said. I do know a bit about. I know what you mean with the skinny jeans business. I do. I
Yeah.
have a friend of mine who's. I'm trying to think of a good euphemism here, but let's just skip to the euphemisms. He likes the penis.
Okay.
Now he wears skinny jeans a lot, and he's very much into people who wear skinny jeans. But I always find it makes people just look really top heavy. You know, it looks like
Yeah.
a tree that's grown wrong.
Right. Right.
Like,
It looks like he's like something bad's about to happen.
yeah, yeah, kind of. It looks like you're about to topple over, or like you're an ice cream that's about to get stolen by a seagull.
Like you just ordered like a triple scoop on a cone, and
Yeah,
it's just like
yeah,
it's not going to stay on there.
yeah. It's just it's slowly toppling, and you're watching the disaster take place, and the person holding
Yeah.
it hasn't noticed, and you just know they're going to turn their head in about 20 seconds, realize their ice cream's on the floor, and they're going to be very displeased. They're just going to ah.
Right. But you can't do anything but pull yourself up by the skinny jeans and get you another scoop.
Yep, precisely. And of course,
But you
if you
can't pull yourself up by the skinny jeans because there's nothing to grab onto.
no, and of course, if you bend, then you need a new pair of skinny jeans. There is one good thing I will say for skinny jeans, though. They
What's
go
that?
with they go with tall boots quite well.
I wear my boots under my jeans.
Yeah, I often do. Well, I tend not to wear jeans. I tend to wear kind of like cargo trousers or
Mm.
combat trousers, cargo trousers equivalent. Because I like extra pockets. But I tend to wear them over boots if I'm wearing tall boots. But if I'm trying to, it depends on whether I'm wearing them for look or functionality. If I'm wearing them for look, I tend to tuck the trousers into the boots because then, the boots tend to be much more interesting to look at than just the plain fabric of the trousers.
Sure.
Like I've got a
I,
fine set of cowboy boots which I found on eBay a while ago.
I usually wear jeans and cowboy boots myself. But around the house, I usually wear basketball shorts. And in the summer, if I'm not like working out on the farm, if I'm just fishing or whatever, it's usually basketball shorts and a tank top.
Hmm. I tend to be. I'm. I'm not particularly comfortable if I'm wearing. I don't wear. I almost never wear shorts. I'm not particularly comfortable if I'm wearing short sleeves, even time, and I like things with high collars, so I like jackets rather than just shirts.
Hmm. Interesting.
But turtlenecks, I like them a lot because they go all the way up the
Oh,
neck.
I, I don't like turtlenecks. I feel like I'm being strangled by a really weak person.
Yeah, see, I can see where you're coming from, but I think I just like I think it might just be like a bit of a security thing. I like to have that feeling that I'm more, kind of covered and enclosed
Hmm.
and all cozy in my stuff, which is probably why summer is probably my least favorite season in terms of temperature.
I think you might like to wear turtleneck sweaters because it gives you security and and you're thinking that maybe your top scoop will fall off.
Well, I definitely don't want the top scoop to fall off. That would be quite disastrous.
Here's my most favorite member of the atheist community, Steven Steen. Hello.
Oh, fabulous! We got a new viewer come in. Oh, this channel really went downhill.
It sure did. As soon as you popped in here.
Oh dear, I've been here for quite a while. Um,
Well, one day Steven's going to realize that maybe it's not every stream that he pops into that's going downhill. Maybe it's him.
oh, it could be. You never know. But now you've arrived. Do you have any questions in the chat? Anyone in the chat have any questions, or have you got anything you'd like to chat about while we're still here?
I'm I mean nothing in particular. I'm pretty up for whatever.
Well, have you, by any chance, seen any of my story readings on my channel?
It's been a while, but I have seen two, I believe.
Which ones do you see? I think I may have maybe 3 or 4 at the moment.
To be completely honest with you, I don't remember. I know it was historical-ish.
Was I doing kind of a Victorian era British voice?
It reminded me. It was very Edgar Allan Poe-ish. One of them.
I think that would be one of the Tales of Lord Blackwood. That's from the SCP Foundation stuff.
Was it Lord Blackwood?
Lord Blackwood, yeah,
Yeah, and Bigfoot.
and Bigfoot. That's one of them. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, yeah. That was one, and I can't remember for the life name what the other one was.
If it was Lord Blackwood again, the other one was
I don't think it
the
was.
Great Tarrasque Hunt of '83. Or was it the
No.
one where I did a really slightly wonky Texan accent?
No, I don't think there's. I think you're just speaking in your normal voice, but it was very slow and very deliberate and
Uh,
very dark and mysterious.
it could have been the Woodvale incident,
Possibly.
which does feature the Texan accent towards the end, but most of it's just read in my normal voice.
I've got to see that because nobody does a good Texan accent from your side of the pond. I'm just sorry.
Well, I can have a go, but yeah, it's for
Go
fun.
for it. Let's hear it.
Oh, we got a question from the chat, which is why is Jim Majors so gorgeous?
Um, my mama made me this way.
It's because he's been putting fence posts in.
Yeah.
He's got those arms going on, just you know.
Ugh, awful.
Right, what was I going to do? I was going to do the Texan accent on that. Well, do you know? Have you played Team Fortress 2, or do you know of Team Fortress 2?
Team Fortress?
It's a game. It's made by Valve. It's cartoon style, team based first person shooter.
No, to be honest with you, I don't game much at
No, fair
all.
enough.
I like Grand Theft Auto, and I play it maybe once a month.
All right, there's a guy, there's a character in Team Fortress 2. One of the classes is the engineer, and the character of the engineer is kind of this Texan character. He's a lot. I think a lot of the voice actors are not actually from where their characters are from, but I think that I'm not sure if the engineer's voice actor is or not, but he's got a great voice. He says stuff like, I think of a good example of. When he comes out, comes out with stuff like, "Now, a real Texan would have dodged that."
That's decent. That's pretty dang decent.
I told you not to touch my machine.
That's that's pretty good. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't say that's Texan. It's definitely Southern. It's
It goes a little bit
maybe
wonky when I'm not saying stuff that where I'm quoting someone else, where I'm trying to improvise it. But it's not too bad.
I'm not even gonna attempt my accents. They all sound racist.
I'd like to hear you try a British one if you if you do any British ones.
Oh gosh, British is so hard.
Well, there's quite a few different accents over here, and they happen actually quite close to each other geographically, but they're very
Or,
distinct even though
or
they're quite close.
I'd really like to hear you do a British accent.
That's not too bad. That's not too bad. It's you could. It's. Oh, I've dropped my mouse. My scoop's fallen off. What was I saying? Yeah, it's possibly a little bit over the top, but it's not too bad.
Yeah, it's a little forced.
There's this American comedian who does a funny British accent. I've picked up like some of my mannerisms, like some of the if I'm doing like a jokey threat, sometimes I'll just steal things from his comedy act.
Oh,
Like he was talking about he was dealing with some British peeps and he couldn't figure out whether they were threatening him or not. He's doing this really over the top kind of London accent. Like, look, mate, if you keep yapping your chops, right? If you keep yapping off at the nouns, I will come round your house and I will do grout work in your bathroom. So,
that sounds
like,
like that sounds
like,
limey.
like for free?
That's hilarious. That is hilarious.
But we are a little bit like that because we do tend to have euphemisms for everything rather than stating it directly.
Yeah, and I enjoy it whenever they rhyme, but like when it's more of a riddle, like you have to figure out what they're saying. Like it's
Oh yeah,
like, oh, this is a game. I like
that's
this.
that's quite common with the old Cockney rhyming slang.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a bit of that with Cornish as well. The Cornish idioms are quite they're a little bit incomprehensible if you're not either from or near Cornwall, or if you don't kind of already know them.
Gotcha. Well,
I
so
can't.
it's really distinctive then.
Yeah, I can't think of some good. I can't really think of good examples right now, but I will try and find. Let me just let's let me get some examples.
Let's see. Steven Steen said, "What made Jim want to start the Atheist Republic, and how does he have time to post all those memes?" I didn't start the Atheist Republic. Atheist Republic was started by Armin Navabi. I was just the CEO for a period. And I do not and have not and did not post any memes. Um, so, well, not from for or from Atheist Republic. And Rory said, "Is was Jim USMC or U.S. Army?" I was neither. I was U.S. Navy.
Oh, interesting.
Um, let's see.
Right,
I think that's it.
I'm just gonna put something in the private chat for you, the
Okay.
StreamYard's chat. What would you reckon? Firstly, how would you pronounce that? And secondly, what do you reckon it means?
All right, my handsome. Like, is that all right, my handsome?
It is all right, my handsome. I'll put it in the chat how it's spelled, and then I will. It's right, me
Uh,
handsome.
all right, my handsome.
It's sort of like that. That was a Cornish one,
See,
and there's.
it sounds awful. It sounds like I'm culturally appropriating a horrible accent.
See, I'm kind of Southern England, so I've got a bit of experience with Cornish, Devon, and Dorset, and that whole kind of coastline area.
it's kind of like when a white kid gets cornrows, in his hair. It's even worse whenever it's shitty cornrows.
Oh
You know,
shit, he got
like like if it's good, like if he's got like a good little wave going on, it's got a nice part, got nice
Yeah,
intersecting
yeah.
lines, it looks good. People might not give him too much trouble, but if it looks like he did it himself with his left hand in the mirror backwards, then they're definitely gonna give him shit about it. Definitely.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. I can see where you're coming from. Um, that was the thing in the chat, and I've lost it. Where is it?
All right, Janssen.
Stop making me feel old, Darth Calculus. That was it. TF2 was popular among my college friends 10 years ago. Yeah, fucking thanks, mate. Now I feel like I need a walking stick. Oh, I'm gonna be
Oh
going
man.
outside, my hair will fall out me there with my walking stick and my trousers up to my nipples.
Does that mean it's cold?
No, it means well, you know how there's the stereotype for the older generations tend to have their trousers pulled up a long way, or pants. It's pants in America, isn't it?
Trousers, pants, jeans. It kind of just depends on the material. Honestly, in America.
Mm.
But yeah, yeah.
Question.
Most of the older generation, like my grandparents' generation, like a lot of the old men wear suspenders.
Oh yeah,
Um, but up until a certain point, they wear a belt, and then there's like this lazy period or this inability period where they switch to suspenders and Velcro shoes.
yeah. Oh shit, I've been wearing zip shoes for years.
I wear cowboy boots because you can pull them on and pull them off. Like it the same reason that I don't and haven't untied or tied my shoes since I bought them.
Mm. I don't have that many sets of footwear with laces. My proper walking boots have laces, but
Uh,
not many of my other boots.
right, like hiking boots, like
Yeah,
ankle.
for go. Yeah, they go. They're up to halfway up the calves, and they're for keeping the water and the mud out when you're out hiking. They've got laces, and most of the rest of my footwear doesn't.
Gotcha. I've got rubber boots that I wear around when I'm like mucking out shit or if it's muddy or something like
Mm.
that. And yeah.
Uh, Question from the chat for me: have I ever been to the pagan May Day celebrations in Padstow, Cornwall? No, not the pagan May Day celebrations, but I have been to Padstow, Cornwall quite a few times, and it's a very nice little town.
It
Uh,
sounds like a good way to get drunk and sacrifice to me.
there's a specific memory that I have from Padstow, which is anytime I smell like a certain smell, I associate it with Padstow, and that is the smell of a fish market.
Oh, interesting.
You know the quite distinctive smell of if you're in a seaside town and they've got sort of the setup there for hauling in fresh catches of fish and putting them in the little
Right.
tanks. That specific smell that goes with that is always associated with Padstow in my mind.
Very thick, very salty, very musky.
Yeah, yeah, that kind of smell. And it comes with lobsters and the
Mm.
various fish and they're
I love the environment though. Like
kept in the
when
little
they're taking
tanks.
the fish off the boats. Like I love the just
Mm.
the dynamic of the people working together.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I've watched it when I've words Padstow. When I was in Padstow years ago, I would sometimes when the ships were coming in with I'd be there at the right time. You'd see them all hauling them off, and all the seagulls following the ships, and it'd be great fun to just watch.
Right.
Um, what was? Oh, I've lost the chat. Hang on. Where's it gone? There it is. Angie says there comes a point when bending over hurts like hell, so you find reasons and ways not to do it. You whippersnapper.
Trust me, I know I have hooks that I pull my boots on with, so I'm not judging.
Yeah, no, I'm not quite at that stage in terms of not being able to bend, but my knees are a little bit funny. They're a little bit more funny than they used to be, and I've got a bit of a wonky ankle as well.
The Norfolk coast is good in England, but the Norfolk in the US, Norfolk, Virginia,
Mm.
is a shithole.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from, and I agree with that. No, I don't. No, that's Stephen's comment. I agree with Stephen's comment that the rest, especially London, sucks. London is awful. Don't go to London unless you're
See,
going to like DaveCon or something.
I've got a soft spot for the architecture.
Oh yeah, no, I can see where you're coming from there. It's
Yeah,
the
but
actual
the people are awful.
the London looks nice as long as you're not in it. If you are in
Right, as long as you don't
London,
have to live there and like make a living.
no, the last time I went to London, I specifically brought a walking stick with me, just in case somebody tried to fucking stab me in an alleyway. Because you know,
By walking stick, you mean it's a stick that you walk with in case you have to beat somebody with it.
yes, yes, it's my personal sort of walking stick that I've made for myself. It's made I think it's made of silver birch. It's coated in layers of my granddad's old yacht varnish and then coated in epoxy on top of that. And it's got a top that's wrapped in leather, as a nice comfy handle, and has a golf ball as a handle. And it's
Oh,
very
nice.
sturdy, and it's made to be the same kind of balance and grip as a bokken, the old Japanese wooden practice swords, because I've trained with those quite a bit. So basically, if I'm set upon by ruffians in the street when I'm in London, I can beat them up with my walking stick.
Yeah, it's essentially a war club.
Sort of, except I would hold it with the golf ball end because then it's better balanced that way.
But isn't that end heavier?
It's heavier, but it's not so easy to swing that way. If I wanted
Huh.
to inflict more damage, I might swing it with that end, but I prefer to hold it with that end
Ah,
because then I can whip it around a lot more quickly and deliver kind of stinging strikes in order to just discourage people from coming
right.
near me.
See,
Not that
I
I've ever
automatically
actually
think
had
that if
to.
I'm going to be swinging a stick, I'm going to be swinging it with the intent to do
Yeah,
maximum damage. Because like if it's elevated to that point to where I'm
yeah,
going to have to use a stick, it's good. It's bad.
yeah.
So I kind of
Not that
skip
I've
the skinny
actually
end and
had
just
to
go
do
straight to the
this.
bashing.
Yeah, not that I've actually had to do this in earnest, but that would be my initial plan. Would be to just discourage people from coming near me. But yes, I agree. London looks nice in pictures. In person, completely disappointed. I went to London. I went on the underground, and then I had to deep clean my nose afterwards because I was blowing black gunk out of my nose.
You're blowing what?
You know when you blow your nose into like
Right.
a tissue or a handkerchief, and it tends to be kind of a greenish color normally, yellowish,
Yeah.
greenish, that kind of thing. It was black, came out black because of all the pollution in the underground.
That sounds like Virginia. Norfolk, Virginia is affectionately called the lung cancer capital of the world.
Mm. Yeah, now a friend of mine, his dad currently lives in London with um, his partner now, and both of them have to have a breathing aid, like a mechanical machine breathing aid when they go to sleep, because the air quality there has given them lung problems. And as soon as they go out of London for a bit, that disappears and they don't need it anymore.
Like a CPAP
I'm not sure what one of them is. Hang on.
or just an oxygen
It's not an
hose,
oxygen thing, I
or
don't think. I think it's just a thing to keep their airways open.
like my grandpa, he died from COPD and sleep apnea, and he had problems like with constricted airways, and he had to sleep with a CPAP, a CPAP.
Yeah. It might be one of those. I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to ask him. But yeah, they need these things in order to breathe. because of air quality in London. It's awful.
Right.
Bad. London bad. Don't London.
Well, it's crazy to me because it seems like New York and London kind of both face the same similar problems regarding pollution, but New York has gotten so much better, and it seems like London's just like, yeah, we know we suck, we like it.
With current events, everybody's still on the bloody underground, spreading the fucking shit all over the place.
Speaking of underground, Darth Calculus posted about SCP
Oh,
1678.
let me go back to that one. Oh, is that? He's put New London, but I think it might be Un-London he's on about. Let me just check
Right,
the
right.
official
It's like a
title of
copy
that.
of London under London.
Let me just check the official title of that SCP. And I know the
I
one
think
it
you're right.
is, and I might actually try to do a thing about it at some point. Uh, well, of course, the SCP Wiki doesn't have it by its colloquial title, does it? But yes, it's the one that I think is called Un-London because it's under London.
Mm.
Yeah, that's one I quite like.
I heard that is that a conspiracy theory or is that like a what is that?
What is what? Sorry.
The whole SCP-1678, like the Un-London, is that
Well,
was that like a local legend or
the
what?
SCP Foundation, it's kind of an online collaborative writing project. I don't know if that particular one is based on urban legends from before, but it's a really interesting kind of thing, and the whole un-London setting particularly is quite interesting because it's got these everything's kind of it's got a really steampunk feel to it, which I quite like. As you can probably tell by my visuals here, that I quite like steampunk.
I actually really like it. Did you do all this yourself?
Bits of it, right? The setup here, parts of it is made out of pre-made stuff, and parts of it is made out of stuff that I've made myself, like the bricks and the floor I did myself, and the jacket and stuff like that I did myself, and little bits
That's
like that.
great.
And the
I
mug,
love the little player piano under the television.
yeah, and the mug is one of my creations and stuff like that. And a lot of it has been modified by me to all fit together nicely.
Nice, very nice.
And I've lost the stream chat. There it is. Yeah, Un-London.
And
That's what I was talking about.
you would think the box would be really constricting, but it's really actually stuff pretty comfy. It's not bad.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I'm quite pleased with it because also the way the StreamYard thing works, it makes the edges a little bit funny. But it, I've never liked just a square box because the square box makes everything feel. I'm a little bit kind of tactile in how I think about the visuals, and the square box just in the middle of the screen makes it feel a bit kind of jagged and rough to me. So the curved edges of my little TV box there, I think, makes it feel a lot warmer and more friendly.
I agree, and it's not like the main focus. You know, you right close to it, you have the little lights and arcs of electricity, and I'm guessing that's some sort of a scrolling message on top of the television and the acorn light. it's it's all really it's not too much, but it takes away from the I guess the intensity of just like you said, like a square screen in the middle.
Yeah, I like to try again. I like to have just a bit of movement. I like to have enough movement to kind of draw the eye and keep your attention if you want your attention to be there, but not so much that you have to stare at it. You know,
Hmm.
if you're just staring constantly, I find that's a bit overwhelming. But if it's enough, there's enough movement for it to be interesting visually if you want to look at it, but not so that it's
Right.
forcing you to stare.
Yeah, you have to be able to keep people's attention, and I mean, if you just have like, if you didn't have the the badger with the different motions and things like that, and just the constant change, I think that maybe people would get tired of looking at just the same repetitive animations or loops. But I think it breaks it up. It
Yeah.
offers some variety.
Yeah, one thing I'm particularly pleased with is my little paintings in the background that they're actually moving if you look at them.
Yeah, yeah, I like the one with the ducks in the water.
Yeah. The one on the left is a tree that's gradually dropping petals, but the one on the right is a lake nearby my burrow with ducks and stuff
Mm.
in. Um,
Oh,
I forgot where I was going with that. Oh, the moving painting. I kind of stole the idea for having a changing picture frame in the background. Have you ever seen the channel Glove and Boots? That's kind of like a puppet show channel.
oh no, no, I haven't.
That's what kind of originally gave me the idea for having picture frames in the background with different things in them. But then I thought, well, why don't I have moving pictures? That'd be fun. So
Yeah,
now I do.
I honestly love the idea. I might borrow it.
Well, if you want to do that, I think it's a great idea, and I think I really like when you're watching a channel and they have something interesting going on visually. I tend
Yeah.
to listen rather than watch a lot of the time, so I will put something on to listen to. If it's kind of like a talky thing where people are discussing a topic, I tend to put it on to just
Mm.
listen to. But I like to be able to glance and there to be something nice to look at, something interesting that draws
Right.
the eye, but doesn't that's
Uh,
not
it,
overwhelming.
do you ever listen to the live music channel Lo-Fi?
I think I have once or twice, yeah.
It kind of has a similar, it has like an animation, but it's nothing real complex. The backgrounds, um, on loop or or static for the most part,
Yeah.
and the characters on loop, but it's not on a loop to where it's noticeable. They have enough variety in their motions and movements and still periods in between that it's not really. I don't know. It's always like you said, like when you can look at it and see something new or see something different,
Hmm.
something dynamic. Like what I want to do with your moving picture idea is like have Easter eggs, but not, maybe just have like a PNG come in and go out just real quick and just like for no reason and just see who notices.
There are little Easter eggs that appear in some of my things. Like, I'm trying to think of an example. Oh, I was talking about. I did a video which featured, that whole discussion about the definition of atheism that keeps going back and forth. And there's one particular character who tends to feature in those discussions quite prominently. You know the character I mean?
I don't know.
Steve McRae.
Oh, duh.
I mentioned that topic uh, in one of my videos a while ago, and as I mentioned it, I just had like just Steve McRae's face just kind of lean in from the side of the frame, just kind of. Whoop.
That's great. That is so great. Just like have cameos from like all of my friends and just without their permission and they don't know it.
I did one. What was I talking about? Oh, question from the chat here, which is Rory Herbert asking me, have I ever been to a steampunk gathering? Yes, indeed, I have. I am a member of several steampunk groups in my local area and was actively attending the gatherings, but I don't think I will be for a little while.
I read Five Cussler.
Oh, outstanding.
Does that count?
But I think it does, to be honest. I've got quite a
I
few sort of steampunk
I've
books
never worn a
or
top
themed
hat or
books.
goggles. I don't own many copper or brass things. But I like the books and I
Mm.
like the world, you know.
Yeah, I do as well. I don't have a top hat. I do have a hat collection, but a top hat is something that's currently missing from it. But I do
I,
have several different sets of goggles.
I don't look good in hats. I have a straw hat that I garden in, and I have a cowboy hat that I wear on rare occasions. But that, that's it.
I've got
I
goggles
just don't.
for
I
all
don't look good in
occasions.
hats.
And I've got hats for all occasions as well. I've got winter hats, I've got summer hats. I was wearing a hat earlier today when I was outside the burrow pulling the sides off the roof of the shed so that they can dry out, and we can put a new coating on the roof. I have kind of a vaguely Australian style canvas hat, which I use for when I'm out gardening,
Right.
such things.
Does it snap on the side?
It's got the snappy sides, yeah, with one side that goes up, and well, both sides can go up, but I normally just have one side up.
Is it a Swiss brand?
I'm not sure. I'd have to check, but it's not in reach at the moment. And my general hat for if I'm just tootling around and feel like wearing a hat is an Australian style leather hat.
Oh, I've seen those. I wish I could pull them off.
It's a similar shape to it's kind of similar to both a cowboy hat and a fedora, but
it's like triangular shape.
Yeah, but it's neither of them. Not the triangular one. No, it's well the actually no. Yes, it is kind of triangular. The middle,
right, and it's got like not a shorter brim, but like a narrower brim.
It's quite a wide brim, but it's narrower than, let's say, like a big wide kind of hat. And it's not curled so much as it's not like your
right.
kind of 10-gallon thing. It's not like a curled edge.
It's meant to like pull down in the front and the back.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like waterproof and
yeah, it's leather, so it's the least resistant to water. Although
I know exactly what you're talking about.
They do eventually go off.
It's what the bad guys in Crocodile Dundee wear.
Sort of, yeah. Yeah, so I'm the bad guys in Crocodile Dundee.
See how racist that sounded? And they're white.
What was I going to bring up? That was something else from the chat. Oh, steampunk events and steampunk gatherings. Yeah, I was talking about those. I have a really nice long brown leather coat. It's like a proper overcoat thing going on that I wear for steampunk events. I'm very pleased with it, and I got it from a like a vintage shop that's not open anymore because the lady who was running it decided she'd had enough. And I got it discounted because it had been hanging in the doorway, and it had been raining on and off throughout that time, and one side of the coat was completely soaked because it had been in the doorway. So I picked this thing out and went, oh, I'll give you a discount on that because of all the water
in it. Yeah, I mean, I've seen hats that I like. I'm like, that would look good on somebody, and I'll buy them. I'll try it on. Look at it in the mirror and just like maybe it'll grow on me, and I'll buy it, and then I just hate it. Just don't look good in it. Just don't look good in hats.
Oh, Darth Calculus says also let's bring back tricorn hats. I agree.
Tricorn.
Pirate ones. The ones you tend to see pirates wearing. They were naval hats for a while, but
Buccaneer.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
The cocked hats.
Yeah, that sort of thing with like a nice big feather in them.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Well, the pirates they would only get it when they would kill a sailor or a military member.
I've got pirates on pirates. I've got feathers. It's the same thing. Got feathers on my my nice leather Australian actually.
Oh, what kind of feathers?
I think the current one's a pheasant.
They got to be kookaburra or emu, or it's not Australian.
Well, the hat is Australian, but the feathers aren't because I'm a British gentleman. You see, so they're local British birds.
Oh, okay.
But I do play an Australian character in a role play that I do.
I guess Australian can be said to be British in a way.
Well, a lot of the Australians are descendants of people who were sent there for cutting purses and throats on the streets of London town.
Right. It was just like, oh, hey, this is a nice spot where there's ocean all around. This will make a great prison. Oh, what? There's people here already.
Yeah, we'll just
Take care of
ignore
them.
them unless we'll just ignore them unless they're in a way which all of them are. In which case, we'll just kind of completely fuck them up for centuries.
From what I remember reading, they actually didn't expect them to survive. Like they left them without provisions and everything.
You might be right there. We're talking about the prisoners, I'm assuming.
Yeah, the
Yeah, yeah.
prisoners.
I think you might be right there. But Australia, once you get used to it, it's actually quite nice. Although, to be honest, I don't think I would survive in Australia.
I really like Australia. I was ported in Perth for a
Oh,
weapons
nice.
onloading and offloading, which ended up taking like 3 months because some shit happened and they got hung up and had to wait for stuff. And so I was there for a while, but I really like Perth. Didn't get to see much else of Australia, just the naval base right there, and then outside of the base, maybe 10 miles. Didn't do a whole lot of traveling, but it was really enjoyable. I really like Australia.
Yeah, I think a lot of it I like. A lot of the kind of things that I know about Australia really appeal to me. The problem is it's really hot, and I do not do well in hot weather. I don't think I'd survive. I think I'd get off the plane and I'd just immediately become a puddle.
I grew up in West Texas with like zero humidity. I've seen 124 degrees in the summer
All right,
Fahrenheit.
give me one
Uh,
second. We'll keep
oh, sorry.
talking, but yeah,
Um, not, not 90.
it's all right. I'm doing the calculations myself. You keep talking in your preferred measurements.
So it'd be
120. What did you
51
say?
Celsius.
124.
It'd be
Yeah,
51
51.
Celsius.
There we are. Yeah, I'd be dead, literally. I would be completely immobile and non-functional at that
Like
temperature.
we're talking so hot that when you're walking in the sand that your feet are in pain because of the heat you feel through the boot. Like we're talking frying eggs on sidewalks, literally.
Yep.
I've seen people bake a tray of cookies on their dashboard or their dash in their truck.
Yep. No, I
Yeah.
would be completely non-functional at that temperature. Okay, what would you say is a in your preferred measurements? What is a comfortable temperature for you?
A comfortable temperature for me. Like, are we talking like year round or for the summer or for the winter or what?
Uh, let's go a year round, or just shut that thing up. What
I'd say a smooth 22
a
Celsius.
smooth 22.
Yeah, or like
So
72 Fahrenheit.
72. Okay. Yep. Let me just do some calculations, and I will tell you. Oops.
Maybe a little warmer.
A
Like
little
I
bit
can
warmer.
tolerate it up to, I mean, really anything up to like 26 Celsius, 27 Celsius, I'm happy with. Down to, gosh, I don't like to get below like 15, 16 Celsius.
All right. I will go with comfortable. Comfortable temperature for me in Fahrenheit would be about 57.
Ooh, really? That's too cold.
Yeah, for me that's about a comfortable mid-range temperature. If it gets that's 14 Celsius. If it gets down to 10, it's starting to get a little cold, but I'm still comfortable. I can
If
just
it's
put
humid, it's okay.
I can
But if
just
it's
put
dry,
yeah
that's awful.
for 10 degrees. Oh dear, 10 degrees Celsius or 50 Fahrenheit. I can just put another layer on. I'll be perfectly fine. If it gets down to 5, no, that's not 5. That's 2. If it gets down to 5, so that's 41 Fahrenheit. It's starting to get chilly, but I'd be still be fine just putting a big coat on.
What about like 35?
If it gets below that, what's 35 in
35 Celsius.
Celsius? That is 2 degrees Celsius. Oh, 35
No, no,
Celsius,
no,
sorry.
no. 35 Celsius.
35 Celsius, that'd be 95 Fahrenheit. 35 Celsius, I'm overheating. I can't sleep, and I'm largely non-functional.
What's your limit going up?
I'm going to say 25 is the upper level where I'm comfortable.
Really, that's about mine too. Yeah, it's about mine.
Yeah, 25 is at 25. I'm starting to struggle to sleep because it's too hot,
Mhm.
and during the day, I won't want to go anywhere because I don't like wearing less than 2 layers, and it's too hot to wear 2 layers.
W- When I'm working with the horses, like in the summer, I sweat my freaking balls off, and like if it's anything above like 23, 25 Celsius, I it's too much for me because I in no time at all, like I'm just drenched, and out here, like the sun beats down on you, like that's what gets you. It's not, the temperature, the wind chill, or anything. It's the sun and the humidity or lack thereof.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It's but it's also for me. No, I forgot where I was going with that. You carry on.
Oh, just being hot and just
Yeah,
just sweating. It's not pleasant.
no, it certainly isn't. Um, I find heat particularly once it gets above 20, I'm starting to get a little uncomfortable. But once it gets above sort of 25, it's too much.
Yeah,
That
yeah, I
level,
agree. 20 is nice.
if
20 is what I keep my house in the summer.
yeah, if I'm sweating just existing, not even moving, then it's no, that's no good.
In the winter, I keep my house about 24.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I have a wood stove.
Oh yeah.
But in the summer, like I'm down to 20 in the house with the air conditioner.
Well, we don't have central heating around here, so internal temperature is strongly related to external temperature. There are British houses with central heating. There's quite a lot of them, but mine is not one of them. So the external temperature is quite closely linked to the internal temperature. In the summer, it gets
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Excuse me 1 second. I think one of my animals are
yeah,
fighting or dying or something.
that's fine. You go do what you got to do. I shall entertain the peeps. So carrying on with the temperature discussion. In the chat, what would you say is your comfortable temperature in either Celsius or Fahrenheit, whichever you prefer? But please tell me which is which. My comfortable temperature, I'm going to put at about 14 to 16 degrees Celsius, which is around 59 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a comfortable temperature to just exist at because I can wear enough layers to be happy. Oh,
It's
he's
okay.
back.
No
He's
worries.
coming
It was
back.
just chickens fucking.
Nope, fair enough. I got some neighbours with them actually. I like to go in and eat them from time to time. I didn't tell you that. Right, where was I? I asked the chat what their comfortable temperature is. Nobody's got back to me yet. While we're on the topic of temperature and different climates, do you know of the Eden Project?
The what
The
project?
Eden Project, as in the Garden of Eden.
Mm, maybe refresh my memory.
It's a thing in southern England. They've got all these different biodomes, which are set up for different climate conditions, but they've got all
Yes,
kinds of plants and animals in there.
yes, yes. It's basically like starting from the beginning. Essentially, it's like a biome of the ideal biosphere. Basically,
Yeah, that's the sort of idea. Yeah, it does.
it mimics different temperate zones, right?
Yeah, yeah. I've been around there a couple of times. It's quite interesting. Now I forgot why I brought this up.
Because you saw Biodome, the movie.
Oh no, I didn't. Why did I bring this up? No, I forgot. Oh, we'll come back to it if I figure it out. Anyway, um,
Eden Project.
yeah, no, I forgot why I mentioned the Eden Project, but it might be something to do with the different temperatures of the different zones and them being.
Do they have people in there?
They do, but it's you can go in and around all the different zones.
Oh no, but I mean, like, do they have like full time? I guess test subjects.
Oh, it's not quite like that. It's kind of
Oh, okay. So it's more like a
it's a recreational place rather
recreational.
than like an experiment place in terms of people. But
Oh, okay. See, I was under the assumption that it was like a scientific, like an ongoing scientific observation
oh,
kind of thing.
there is an element of that, but it's more to do with the plants and the environments and the animals than the people.
Right. I mean, I guess you got to fund it some way, huh?
Yeah. Nope. What else was I going to say? Let's see. Oh, that's a little topic related to temperature. You mentioned that you keep your house sort of at 24 in Celsius during the winter.
About 20. Oh, in the yeah, in the winter it does get warmer just because the wood
Yeah,
stove gets so hot, and I usually have all the windows and the doors open.
yeah. I,
So yeah.
I tend to find if I'm going in and out during well summer or any time of year, I prefer the house or borough in my case to be fairly well matched to the temperature of the outside world, maybe just a little bit closer to comfortable than the outside world is. Just because if I'm going in and out a lot, this happens with shops as well. You know, if you go into a shop and you're going in to buy something and it's the middle of winter and it's snowing outside and it's like maybe 2 degrees outside Celsius,
Oof.
and then you go into the shop and it's like 25. Suddenly, as soon as I walk in, I feel like I've got to take all the outdoor layers off, and there's nowhere to put them because you're walking around a shop. So I end up just carrying the things. I'm like, well, why can't you have it a bit fucking colder in here so that I can walk in and not immediately die of heat exhaustion?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. I go out in the morning about 6 a.m., 7 a.m., and I don't come back until lunch. Sometimes I stay out there through lunch. But when I come in, like in the winter, like I'm usually my hands hurt because they're so cold. My toes, I can't feel them, and like there's nothing better to me than walking up to like my wood stove and just like rekindling it and throwing on a couple of logs and just sitting by the fire, and it's probably like 30 Celsius right there beside
Mhm.
the wood stove,
Oh yeah, I
but
know
it's
what you
just
mean.
like to
We've
me
got a
there's nothing better.
we've got a wood burner here actually, and it's great during the winter. You can just put it on and sit there and watch the flames kind of lick over the wood, and it's great fun. Oh, we got Jesus is Lord in the chat. He says Jim Majors is my favorite atheist.
Oh dude, thank you so much, man. I actually just saw that in the live chat and I was just commenting. That that really means a lot. Brings a smile to my face. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah, we mentioned you earlier actually, Jesus is Lord. It's good having you on for a chat a while ago. We should if you fancy having me on for a discussion or you come on again at some point if you've got a topic that'll be interesting.
Oh, I must have missed that one. With Jesus is Lord.
Yeah, I had a discussion with him a while ago. I'm pretty sure it was Jesus is Lord. Let me just check my channel actually, make sure I'm not talking out of my ass.
Oh, I must have completely missed that. I don't know if I haven't been invited, but just to put that out there, if you ever want me to come on, I'm more than happy to. I've enjoyed the conversations that we've had.
Yeah, no, it was Jesus is Lord. It's called Chat with Jill, the video on my channel.
It's on your channel.
Yeah, it's on my channel. You can find
Okay,
that.
cool. I'll
Yeah.
check that out. It was the last one,
Just
the
go.
one before this.
No, it was a little while ago. Let me just tell you how. Oh well, I can never find anything quickly when I'm trying to tell somebody something. Where is it? It was 2 weeks ago that I had this discussion. And yeah, it was quite interesting.
I actually just added it to my watch list.
Outstanding. Um, well, is there anything you fancy having a little chat about, or anything you want to ask me while you're here?
Um, Nothing in particular. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has, or you have, or whatever. Uh,
All right.
I
Any
don't
more
know.
questions from the chat while we're here before we toodle off? While we wait to see if any come in, I'm gonna say in the chat. See. So Jesus Lord says you can't drink and smoke at the same time, Badger. You just watch me. I do what I like.
That's amusing. I must have missed it. Oh no, you got it right there. Okay, it never leaves, does it?
Nope.
You never finish it? Just
Well, you just can't see me replacing it because I'm so quick.
right.
I'm the
Gotcha.
fastest cigar in the West.
Hey, easy there, Pilgrim. You know, I never understand why everybody thought John Wayne was such a good actor. He only played one character.
He just played John Wayne in all his films.
He played John Wayne. They called him different names. They gave him an eye patch and they set him up with a bunch of boys in another movie. But he always played John Wayne, and everybody said he was a great actor, but he was shit.
He was
Because
great
right
at
now I'm playing a John Wayne character, and you can't tell me which one I am.
he was great at playing he was great at playing John Wayne.
Yeah, but not Rooster Cogburn.
Did he play like some Roman general or something?
Yeah, he actually played in
And then he
in the
played him as
Passion
John
narrative.
Wayne.
He was the one who said, surely this is the Son of God. I think that was his only line in the whole thing was just, surely this is the Son of God. It's
You know when you
like,
got an
wow,
actor.
John Wayne, you're really coming up, aren't you?
You know you got an actor when they've got like a really distinctive voice and they don't even bother changing it.
Yeah,
They play each character with that voice. It's like Michael Caine. You know
you
Michael
killed
Caine.
Jesus and you got a line 5 minutes before the credits. Way to go.
Yeah, like you know Michael Caine. Do you know Michael Caine?
Michael Caine?
He's a very well known British actor. He's got a sort of a very
Yes.
distinctive
Yes, I think
voice
he's an
for the London.
older gentleman.
He is an old gentleman these days. Yeah.
Yes, and he's hilarious.
He is actually hilarious, but you wouldn't think
Yes.
it if you saw him in a film. You know,
Nope.
he's got that very. He played Alfred in the
Yeah.
Batman the Dark Knight trilogy.
In his interviews when he's candid, he's fucking hilarious.
Oh, he is. He did an interview where he was talking about people doing imitations of his voice, and then he started doing an imitation of his voice. So, oh yeah, like there's these people, right? They just got to put on that. They got me in birthday cards, right? And it's like anyone can do it. I can do it. Hello, I'm Michael Caine. It's your birthday today. There's not many people know that.
Very good, Master Bruce. Yeah.
I thought he
Good
was
stuff.
brilliant as Alfred as well.
Yeah, I think so too. The only other Alfred that I liked more than him was the one who. Wait, did he play Alfred in Gotham?
He was in the Dark Knight trilogy with Christian Bale as Batman.
Rory said when. Oh wait, Jesus Lord asked first. Said, "How do you think Trump, the Great White Hope, is doing managing the Corona Dragon?" I think he's doing an awful job. I think he needs to leave it in the hands of the experts. I think he needs to learn to. One of Trump's biggest problems is he cannot take guidance. He cannot. He cannot be made to feel like the idea was not his. He always has to be the hot shit, the top dog, and it's it's always for the worse. So I think he's doing awful.
I watched an interview with him where he was talking about vaccines and stuff, and he quite clearly does not understand how vaccines work.
No, doesn't understand herd immunity, doesn't understand social distancing, apparently.
Although apparently he put in all caps on Twitter just social distancing.
Uh, oh man. Hashtag don't drink Corona. Rory said, when Jim was in the U.S. Navy, did he witness a nuclear missile test launch? I was on a Seawolf class sub once, and I did witness a mock Tomahawk launch. Basically, they fill a torpedo chamber with air. Basically, they pull what they call like a slug. So it's mostly air, and there's a little bit of water in there, and then they will basically just shoot it just like a torpedo. It sounds like a torpedo. It's scary as hell if you don't know what's going on. So if you're in the rack and you don't get the announcement and you're like 12 hours into like some hard sleep after pulling an 18-hour shift, then yeah, it scares the hell out of you. Uh, but anything surface, I haven't witnessed a surface missile test launch. I've witnessed ADCAPs, advanced capability missiles, which have like your bomblets and things like that to tear up airstrips. But most of my time in the Navy was spent on fast boats, on ribs, rigid hull inflatable boats. They're fast boats. I was out of Little Creek, Virginia, and we went all up and down the Tigris and Euphrates doing insertions and extractions and things of that nature.
I do know quite a fair bit about ribs, not due to any naval experience, but I used to do safety boating for a sailing school, so we would use ribs quite a bit for that.
Yeah, they're something else. They're fun.
They're very fine vessels, and they're quite zippy if they got a good engine on them.
Yes, they are. They had one. I don't know if they still have it, but it had a 454, and it basically like a big block Chevy engine. Was badass. The particular boat that I was on, I mean, you could spin it around on in a pond, really. So you never have to worry about touching the other side of the other side of the riverbank. Even in the spots where it was, 25, 30 feet wide, just spin right around. It's been throwing up rooster tail, just a wall of water. And of course, the aft mounted guns were fun. Good calibers.
I had a follow-on question, but what was it? Oh,
you were only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.
Oh, Jesus is Lord. Typical liberal response.
What does it mean when somebody says bully? Like, do people still do that?
When it says what, sorry?
Then they say bully or jolly good.
Oh, they don't say bully so much these days, but when it's used in a positive sense, it's generally just a positive affirmation to just sort of say, oh yeah, that's good. And
like
jolly
a bravo
good
or attaboy.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Jolly good is just jolly, as in an additional, positive modifier to the word good.
Gotcha.
I may occasionally say things like jolly good, but I say things like that more when I'm talking to Americans because I start overdoing the British a little bit, just so because I feel like if you're talking to an American audience, they really enjoy it if you overdo the British.
Yeah. I think at least in order for me to do it or to feel like I'm doing it, I feel like that I have to exert myself. Like I find it difficult to make those noises.
Yeah, I know what you mean. No, it comes fairly naturally to me, but I have several different accents because I can do. Due to my upbringing, I was kind of brought up in a more upper middle class primary school, and then I went to kind of a more lower middle class secondary school because of various circumstances. So I can imitate both kind of views of it. The so I can be more colloquial and I can be more formal. So if I was to talk more like I did when I grew up in a small village out where everyone talked a bit more posh, where I would talk a little bit more formally. I would enunciate the T's a bit more, and I would be quite careful to make sure that I'm pronouncing words in the correct way rather than in a more colloquial way. Whereas if I was to talk more like the colloquial kind of secondary school, would be a bit more like this. I'd go a bit more casual, and I'd become a bit more lazy in my speech, and I'd start missing out certain letters, things like that, just to make it easier to say and less posh sounding, to make it clear that I don't give a shit what those posh toffs up in fucking London have got to say about the issue, you know?
Yeah, if I'm being completely honest, if I were to talk like I used to, I'm kind of the opposite of you. Before, it was very much my upbringing and the people who were around me that affected my accent. And I find myself that when I get back around my family and friends that did talk like this,
Hmm.
then sometimes it come out just a little bit more.
Yeah.
And it's a combination of West Texas and Southern Louisiana, so it's like a booyah. You know what I mean? Uh,
Oh yeah.
um, but now that I realize that there are better ways to express myself that sound a little bit more intellectual, then yeah.
I actually really like the Southern American accent, but I particularly like kind of the Southern Belle, the kind of that female voice of it.
The
I really enjoy
debutante.
that. That really works for me. That
Why, Mr. Debbie Claire, I do declare,
Yeah,
sir,
the I do declare is the bit that I really
will
like.
you go and pick me a pecan from that pecan tree?
Yeah. Uh, no, I particularly like that. I like when you hear kind of like an older Southern American speaking person and they've got the kind of the slower drawl
Oh,
rather than
yeah. What
the
you
quicker one.
mean is like the Whataburger guy. He's
Yeah,
like, you can get up early in the morning and feed your chickens and then go down to the local Whataburger and get you some biscuits and gravy or a ham and egg croissant. And
yeah,
it's
exactly.
just something, we don't get in a hurry. We just wait for the sun to come up and drink our coffee.
Yeah, exactly. That that
Very John
that's
Wayne, actually.
that's kind of thing. I really enjoy just the slower version. The quicker one doesn't do it for me because if you do the quicker version,
Mm,
it's kind of it feels like you're rushing something that should be done slowly
right.
and calmly.
It's like you got to pay attention to them, but the people who speak slower, it's like you don't feel like you have to,
Yeah.
focus as much. It's like
Hmm.
you can appreciate the scenery,
Yeah. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. It's kind of the difference. If you listen to English accents, it's kind of the difference between Southern England and London. Now, technically speaking,
Uh,
London is southern, but if you talk to any Southern England people, they don't consider London part of Southern England.
right.
Um, London is London. London is essentially a separate country where everyone talks far too fast. They're all up themselves and they're all dying of lung problems. So, London, I can't really do London very well, but I could do kind of the Cockney Michael Caine London a bit, but I can't do how modern Londoners talk. They're too
Got you.
they talk
So you can do movies London, but not modern London.
yeah, they talk far too fucking. I couldn't. When last time I was in London, I couldn't understand what they were saying because
Right.
they just talk too fast.
Yeah, the only people I can understand in London are the shopkeepers, like the people who own businesses, but like
Yeah,
people on the streets, like you can fucking forget it.
And of course, there's a lot of people who aren't originally from the UK in London, so that adds to the accent pool and means that understanding between different groups of people is more difficult, just because everyone talks differently. Even if they're talking the same language, the different accents and colloquialisms make understanding more difficult.
What influence, if any, do you think that Middle Eastern immigrants are influencing upon British culture?
So, could you repeat the question?
Like, do you think that incoming cultures and like not just your normal immigrant, but waves of immigrants from these Middle Eastern countries, uh, you got Palestinians, Iranians, Iraqians, and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
Do do you do you think that they are influencing the culture like some like a permanent influence?
I think
Like,
they are, and in several different ways. In London, I think there are actually, if you look at the numbers, there are less people who are sort of native British than there are people who have moved to London from other places, actually now in London. Which for a city that is a multicultural trade hub is not necessarily unexpected. It's London is a center of travel for people from all over the world, so you kind of expect there to be a lot of people that have moved there from other places. For
yeah, but we're talking like more permanent fixtures though than
Yeah,
just traveling.
for other areas of the country, because I consider London to be kind of a separate country to the rest of England, it affects the rest of the country in a very different ways. In other areas of the country, particularly more isolated areas, it's made the culture more insular because
Hmm.
suddenly there's all these people who don't understand the kind of the local customs and have a
How do you mean?
completely different outlook on things. Like, what's a good example? A lot of British people are quite reserved. We tend not to express negative emotions outside of sarcasm.
Right, they're very private, right?
Yeah. Cultures that are quite touchy feely and quite, people from places where they're very open with each other and talk to each other a lot don't get British people very easily because we're quite closed to each other and quite withdrawn.
And
Um,
vice versa, I'm guessing.
yes, exactly. Something I've heard from Brits who've been in America is everyone smiles too much and it's very disconcerting.
But you would think that the people who are more reserved would notice the more expressive behaviors and uh, in some ways be able to appreciate it. Like you would think that that would be unavoidable. That you can see the value and the rawness and the beauty in people being expressing themselves so freely.
Yeah, there is an element of that, but there's also, because particularly, let me give you an example. I'm not going to go into specific areas as such, but I'm going to talk about themes from a specific area that I know quite well. This has happened in various places throughout the UK, but council houses and assisted living and places for people who are on lower incomes and can't afford to buy places, or places where people have bought houses previously but they can't afford to buy a new house. Um, there have been things where people, due to after the Second World War, that the fallout from the Second World War is still being cleaned up in some places
Absolutely.
here. Because the Blitz, it fucking bombed the
Right.
shit out of everything. There are
Yeah.
buildings in the city near me that you can still very clearly see bomb damage in because there's like whole buildings missing, and they've just kind of sealed off the walls, so the buildings that remain are still there.
Right.
Um, Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, clearing out kind of the slum clearance from where people had just been trying to live in the wreckage, and that had gone on for literally decades after the war. There were areas in sort of city centres where they'd been people had been living in these rundown houses for decades, and the government then said, right, well, we will move you out of these houses, we'll demolish them, we'll rebuild them, then we'll move you back in. And that had been the promise to the local people. Then what happened was some refugee crisis or other happened, and they moved refugees into those new houses.
Well, was that
So
some sort of like a government
yeah,
funded thing?
yeah, and then that
Okay.
fractured the community that had been there and made everyone in that community very hostile to anyone who looked or sounded foreign.
So they essentially created a ghetto.
Yeah, they created a ghetto and they created racism that didn't previously exist.
Right.
Because even
They
if those people,
introduced segregation
yeah,
literally.
even if those people would have previously been welcoming to refugees and people from other countries who were having difficulties, they now weren't, because those people had replaced them in their homes, essentially. The homes that had been promised that they would be moved back into, they weren't allowed to move back into. So that created a situation
Mm.
where those local people hated anyone who sounded or looked foreign, because they had the government had essentially replaced them with these people.
Right. So who do you place the blame on? Your own government or these foreigners?
you, there's there's no clear place to lay the blame, but the
Right.
blame falls on the people
Sure.
who've been moved in, because they are
Right.
the
Because
front
they're
they're
right
the front
there.
line of
They're
it. They are there
yeah,
and they look and sound different,
exactly.
and that
Exactly.
creates tension where tension didn't previously exist.
And that's what happens when the government is settles for the quick, easy solution.
Yeah, and little things like that. Sorry, just a second. Little things like that have happened all over the country, and even things where it hasn't been a government initiative, or just things have happened, just they've naturally progressed and things have happened like that, have made people hostile.
Yep.
There is a hostility to people from other places that there wasn't before, because of all this influx of refugees and immigrants.
Hmm.
The thing where it happened previously was Polish immigrants, because
What about intrinsic violence, like from the immigrants? Do you see any of that?
yes, not so much in my area, but yes, in other areas of the UK.
Is it infighting or is it against the locals?
It's both. The examples you see of infighting are things like honor killings,
Like Sunni Shiite
that
disagreements?
kind of thing. I don't want to speak on that too much, because I
Sure.
don't understand the culture well enough to have any meaningful input on it.
What
But
would you say it's cultural
but
disagreements?
from an outside perspective, that is what you see. Is you see that there are honor killings, stuff like that. There are cultural disagreements between different cultures
Mm,
that never used to live so close to each other, but
right.
now do. Or cultures. Another example is cultures that were bordering with each other in their homelands have now moved to this country, and there's that still that same conflict, even though they're completely divorced from the land disputes that were happening before. There's still that innate feeling of dislike for each other.
There's a difference though, like kind of I feel because in a way they feel validated in if it's honor killings for instance, they feel validated in that it's not violence to them. While it may be a violent action to them, it's seeking justice and achieving justice.
Hmm.
Whereas I feel like from the other side, it's violence that is very intentional
Yeah,
and doesn't seem to be founded in anything
and
that.
if you want an example of cultural differences between British people and the British culture and other cultures coming in, an example of that is let's look at Islam as an example. There's the thing with women
Mhm.
wearing the various head coverings.
Right.
There are some people from those cultures who are very hostile to anyone who doesn't wear those coverings. And there are people in British culture who are very hostile to anyone who tells them what they should wear.
Right. And I've seen hostility towards people who exercise that.
Oh yeah, and there's also hostility to just because of that now resentment to any of these foreign cultures coming in. There is
Sure.
hostility to anyone who is wearing anything that resembles that culture.
It really saddens me that that's what people jump to first instead of maybe this person is being oppressed and subjected to this. Maybe this
Yeah,
person needs to be
that's
saved and not ridiculed.
that's my view on it is that you know it doesn't help to ridicule these people, even if it can be funny sometimes, and it can help
Sure.
sometimes if you are having a jokey conversation with that person. You say, oh, that's a bit silly, and they go, yeah, I suppose it is. Maybe I should rethink it. But sometimes that can work. But when it's just nasty, it doesn't get anyone anywhere. You know what I mean? It's just
I agree.
you're just
Humor
making
is
it
one thing, but when
worse.
it's directed, when you direct it towards something, that's whenever you show intent, and intent is where it lies.
Yeah, and the conflict happens in it boils over. Right. Well, just look at this from kind of an intelligence level perspective. If you imagine that the average IQ is 100.
Mhm.
Imagine kind of the average person, and then think that 50% of people are below that.
Yeah, but
Then you
Stephen
imagine
King is okay.
people, and then you imagine people on both sides of a cultural divide who are not super well educated and they're not super thoughtful about other people's perspectives, and they've got all this propaganda fed into their heads from whichever cultural background they come from about how the other culture is and how they perceive them.
Yep.
Any little
Dogmatic
con
even.
Yeah, any little conflict between those two cultures, if it's between people who haven't really put thought into it, they will revert to that saying, you don't rise to the occasion, you default to the level of your training.
Right.
I think that's a military saying, but
Yeah, it's a military attitude for sure.
yeah, that happens, but with cultural perspective. So people will
Hmm.
default to their preconceptions about a culture they don't know about, and if their preconception is, oh, they're weird goat fuckers who wear funny clothes, then that's what they'll come out with, and
Well, I
that
think everybody's going to go in with preconceptions. It's whether or not you're willing to have that preconception altered. Because I
yeah,
mean,
and a lot of people aren't.
like for instance, the first time I went overseas, to be honest with you, I expected to see a bunch of goat fuckers.
Hmm.
You know, and I went in with that preconception,
Yeah,
but that rapidly changed. Several times I went through several, and then I mean, essentially, in my world travels and my infinite mustache wisdom, I learned that it's you can't judge a person
no,
by a culture. You can't put somebody inside of a box just because
no,
they're from that box. That it is not your right to put them in there and put a label on them just
yeah,
because they look like they belong there. I think that
well,
it's that you should analyze and assess and
hmm,
determine where this person goes. And we're going to have co- conceptions about everybody, but it's whether or not we let our biases affect it to the point to where we're unwilling to alter those.
yeah. And there is another side to that, which is that stereotypes exist because a culture it tends to lean in that direction.
Yes, and they're
Like
often helpful.
British stereotypes of being sarcastic and withdrawn exist because a lot of British people are sarcastic and withdrawn, because that is how British culture makes people. Uh,
Yep.
if like for me as someone with I'm even more sarcastic and withdrawn than your average Brit because I have certain learning difficulties, which mean I have difficulty understanding body language. So way of dealing with things is I am quite emotionally withdrawn from people until I know them well enough to feel comfortable being open with
Right, that makes sense.
them. I forgot where I was going. That give me a sec. That stereotype exists because that is true to an extent, because that is how the culture of the country tends to make people. But
Stereotypes kept me out of jail. My
yeah,
first time in London, there's a stereotype of London coppers being uh, weak and not putting out very much effort.
hmm
And so when I got into a fight, I used to do stupid shit. I got into a
yeah,
bar fight. This is back when I was a Christian. I
yeah,
got into a bar fight, wasn't even drinking, and they tried to arrest me. And so I just pushed one of them and ran away from them. There's two of them,
yeah,
and they chased me for like a block. Like, and I was like, wow,
yeah.
it's true. And
They
but
fucking don't give a shit, do they?
had it not been for that stereotype, I wouldn't have ran from them because cops here are very authoritative and forceful, and you try to
Yeah,
run, you might die today. You
yeah,
know,
uh-huh. Yeah. No, the police over here are very unlikely to use lethal force. Most of them do
right?
not
Or
have
even
the
tase
capacity.
you.
Most of the police here do not have the capacity to use lethal force because they're not armed. At least not armed with
Yeah,
firearms. Uh, but the ones that do their utmost to avoid it, because that is part of British culture, is that we've done away with the death penalty because that's not what we want to be anymore.
right. Valuing life. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's great.
I'm a little on the side of uh, I think gun ownership and weapon ownership in general has become too taboo in this country now, because now people are afraid to defend themselves. But I think there is an element of benefit to it as well, because there's less violence.
But I think that a person's life has value if they give it value, if they value their life. Like in a case where somebody's breaking into somebody's home, somebody's residence where they live,
hmm
knowing that they could die, I don't think that person values their life.
Yeah.
You know, uh, uh, it's a it's a weird thing. If a person broke into my house, would I shoot them? It depends. Do they have a gun? Is
Yeah.
it pointed at me? You know, now if you ask me, would I pull a gun on somebody who broke into my house? You're damn right. That's the first thing I would do. I'd pull a gun on them,
Yeah.
and and then escalate from there if necessary. But
Well, let me
I
give
don't know
you.
if somebody's in there with a gun, breaking into my house. I would assume that they don't value their life.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of similar. I'm a little unusual in terms of that. I think in terms of the British view of it, but if you break into my home, you are being threatened with a sword. Uh,
That'll work.
if you come towards me after I've told you to leave and threatened you with a sword, that sword is going in you.
You talking
Uh,
like a katana or a broadsword or what?
the one that I have closest to hand is a katana.
Oh, you have multiple swords.
Yes. Um, but
Don't break
I.
into Badger's house.
But let me
Check.
put it this way: I don't want to put that sword in you. That's if you just leave, then I'm not going to do. I'm not going to chase you. I'm not going to do anything like that.
Exactly.
I will
That's
only
exactly how
do
I
that if
feel.
I actually think I'm in danger, because I've told you to leave and I'm armed and you're coming towards me, which means that you think you can deal with an armed person in their own home.
Exactly. I would never shoot an unarmed person, and I would never shoot somebody in the back. I don't care what they had in their hands as they were running away. I would call the police as long as they're
Yeah,
running away. That's fine by me.
yeah,
I'm pissed they stole something. I hope they get caught, but it's
yeah,
not worth their life.
yeah. That's kind of my view on it as well. As if I say, yeah, if I'm there and I tell you to leave and you leave, I'm not gonna come after you. It's fucking you've
Right.
gone. I'm safe now, and that's
Right.
that's the point of this. That's
Right.
that's why I'm defending myself, is because I want to be safe.
Right. Well, I'm not concerned with my things. I mean, while I love my stuff and some of it's worth a lot of money, and a lot of it would be hard to replace, both
Yeah,
monetarily and sentimentally. uh, I'm not protecting my valuables. I'm not protecting my house. I'm not protecting myself. I'm protecting my family. I'm protecting my family's sense of of peace and security and safety.
yeah, no, I agree. Now, for me, it's quite unlikely that that would ever be an issue because break-ins tend to happen when nobody's home.
Right. Yeah.
But but for the sake of argument, assuming it did happen while I was here, that would be my response. It's really unlikely. Um,
But you have to think who would do it while you're there. Somebody who didn't case it, somebody who was desperate, somebody
yeah,
who was, frantic.
yeah. And my personal view is, let's put it this way: I don't want to kill someone. I don't even want to hurt someone. I want
It's
to.
it's nothing to be proud of. Nothing. There's no
Yeah,
righteousness in
I
killing.
want to make it clear that I will do what is necessary to keep myself safe, and if they don't make it necessary for me to do anything, then I won't. They can just leave, and everything will be fine.
Taking a person's life is not glorious, and there are a lot of people who treat it as such, and those are the people that have never had to watch the life leave another person's eyes.
hmm And speaking as someone who has done that, but not because I caused it, it's not pleasant.
It's not.
Anyway, on to a more fun topic. Where was I going to go with that? Oh, you were asking me about the British culture and has it been
All the
influenced by?
influences.
Yeah, yes, it has. In some ways positive, in some ways negative. In negative sense because it's become more insular, but in the positive sense because there's new things for people to experience, like the different. A good example is turbans. You know, the whole Sikh culture with the turban.
Yeah,
There was a
yeah.
whole little thing around my area a while ago by a local chap. He's originally from somewhere else, but
And the sword and the
he's been
sash.
he's been in this country for literally decades, and he was just teaching people in his area to tie a turban in the way that his culture from where he's
Yeah.
originally from does, and it was really interesting.
I really love Sikh religion.
Yeah,
If somebody were to ask me what I think is the most peaceful religion, I would say Sikhism.
yeah, and that's where things benefit. It's where people acknowledge that they are different, but rather than making that a point of contention, they make that a point of celebration, and they compare and contrast, but in a friendly way.
Do you see any real longevity from any of the influences? Do you see any potential for longevity?
Possibly. I'm
Are we talking like cuisine or like
Cuisine, yes,
language or what?
definitely. Well, British have got a great history of appropriating other cultures' food.
Yeah, and making it boring.
Hey, our pizza's much better than Italian pizza. Anyway.
Yeah, but your meat pies are awful.
Oi, our meat pies are excellent, especially if you have them with baked beans. Now, uh, pasties. You should have a pasty,
A pasty?
not the stripper thing. That's the thing that
Oh,
seems to come up whenever I mention pasties to
I was thinking like
Americans.
tassels.
No, not those. I mean, right. Give me a sec. Are you looking at the thing? Can you see the live stream?
Yes.
Let me see if I can make this happen. I should be able to if I've set this up. I've got a whole thing. Let me get a good picture. Not
What's it
that
gonna
one.
do?
That's awful. I should be able to set the live stream up so that it switches to a screen share function that I've come up with.
Whoa.
but not through the StreamYards. Here we go. Right. Uh, can you see?
It might take a second.
See, here we have, it's like a little pastry container, but it's not pie shaped. It has a quite unique pasty shape, and within it, there can be all kinds of fillings. But the standard
Oh,
filling for a proper pasty is chopped up vegetables and meat, and that's
yeah.
usually beef, and it's usually potatoes, swede, carrots, onions, and a few other little bits. Maybe some spice, bit of salt, a bit of butter
Yes.
melted in, and that is a proper pasty. Here's a few more pictures while we're at
It,
it.
it's kind of like kind of sweet, kind of buttery, juicy, like really flavorful.
That's the thing, yeah. Here's a
Yes.
good picture. Here's a good example. Now you see we've got all the innards in there, and it's all good stuff. If you have it on a plate with baked beans, it's excellent. If you have it in your hand in a paper bag, it's excellent. It's excellent in pretty much all forms. They tend to have a little bit of pepper in them as well, but you find some places over pepper them, but a lot of places they have just the right amount.
Interesting. Oh, cool. There reminds me of what the Hispanics in West Texas call empanadas.
Yeah, it's also similar to something from certain Eastern European cultures. I'm not sure which one exactly. It might be Russia, it might be Poland,
It,
but it's a thing called a chiburek, and
it,
it's that thing is essentially like a pasty but deep fried.
it looks like a Turkish dish called burek.
Yeah, that's very probably from the same source because it's almost the same word, just with one syllable missing.
Yeah, it's like Turkish,
Yeah,
Serbian.
Serbian. That's probably where the link is.
Gotcha.
Anyway, I've lost the chat. Where's it gone? There it is. Rory Herbert reckons Jim needs to try a melted mulberry pork pie. I agree.
I've had pork pie. I don't know if I've had that particular
That
one.
particular one, I think, is a specific high quality version of that.
Oh, is it the Gordon Ramsay pork pie?
Sort of.
Get out
Oh,
of my fucking kitchen!
Gordon Ramsay's brilliant.
Oh, but he's such a sweet guy, like in real
Oh, he
life.
is. Yeah.
Like I don't know how he plays such a hard ass. Like I always thought he was an asshole.
Well, no, he can be when he's cooking because when he's running a kitchen, he's got to run that kitchen and he's got to make sure it's doing high quality food quickly, so he can be quite stern and
Yeah,
belligerent
but does
in
he have to
that
psychologically
circumstance.
fuck people up for life?
Well, that part of it's put on for the show, really.
It's like, what are you? And she said, an idiot sandwich.
Oh, one of my favourite things that he says. There's a load of meme compilations with Gordon Ramsay just saying stuff. They're just taking clips of him, put little animations to it. He's like,
I stumbled upon this blog and it was
"Come on,
Gordon
donkeys,
Ramsay.
get in here!"
It was Gordon Ramsay responding to people's Instagram posts that tagged him in it. It was like, Gordon Ramsay, what do you think about my macaroni and cheese? And he was like, looks like absolute fucking shit.
Oh,
I wouldn't feed that to my dog.
that's wonderful. But you see the difference in him when he's doing the kids version of his show, and he's got the children there, and
Yeah.
he's just really encouraging, and he's just lovely with them. And it's
But it
just the
does
adult one.
get
He's
kind of
just, "You
hard on him,
fucking
like when
donkey,
one
take
kid's
your
like
jacket
messing
off
up
and
or being
fuck
slow.
off."
Yeah. Put a move on it. Oh, I have a love-hate relationship with Gordon Ramsay. It's kind of like Simon Cowell.
Oh yes, fucking Simon
Oh,
Cowell.
I have a I have a confession to make.
Go on.
I watch a daily show
Mhm.
from your part of the world, and I go out of my way to watch this show
Yeah.
every day. I love it. It's my favorite show out of all shows. It's
Go on.
8 out of 10 cats. Does countdown?
Oh yeah, I do know a little about this show. Let me
with,
just check I'm talking about the right show.
with Jimmy Carr.
Yep, I know the show.
Yeah, I
It's
love it.
one of the various sort of TV news related quiz shows, isn't it? Is that the one I'm talking? The one you're
Yes,
talking
there's
about?
like number games and
Yeah, yeah,
skits and
yeah.
things like that. Hilarious. It's hilarious.
Have you seen the news? Not the news quiz, actually. It's the other one, or it might be the news quiz. Now I'm thinking about it. There's various very similarly formatted shows, and one of them is the news quiz.
The news quiz.
And there's also the Now show on the radio and a few very similar sort of news related quiz shows. There was one, and I can't remember the title of it, but it had, you know, Brian Blessed?
Yeah,
It had him as a guest host on it for one glorious episode. It was
like a
absolutely.
cameo or.
Yeah, he was. They normally have like a host, the person who kind of reads out the questions. And it's
Mhm.
Jimmy Carr on the 8 out of 10 Cats. And yeah,
Oh, okay,
it
yeah,
had
yeah.
Brian Blessed as the host for one episode, and it was absolutely. It was when Gordon Brown was the prime minister.
Okay. I
This
think I
was a
know. I think I know when you're talking about.
Yeah, this was a little while ago, but this one episode was sort of the best episode of that show to ever exist.
Is it like the big fat quiz of everything?
It's that sort of thing, yeah. And it
Okay,
had
gotcha.
Brian Blessed as the host, and you know Brian Blessed as in Flash Gordon.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
Gordon
That's where
Brown
I knew him from originally. Yeah,
Yeah, Gordon Brown was having some political issues at the time. He'd made himself a bit unpopular with some things he said, and
he not
there's,
dressed up like Flash Gordon.
there's Brian Blessed there just going. Now, due to recent events, a lot of people have said that Gordon Brown's political career is dead, but I say no. Gordon's alive.
What?
that
That is an
was
endorsement I would not want.
that was how he introduced the show.
That is hilarious. That how embarrassing. Oh
But the
man.
thing was, Brian Blessed didn't really know what was going on for a lot of the show. He hadn't quite got his head around the format, so a lot of the time he was just reading the prompts, just going, "What is this? How am I supposed? Oh fuck it, we'll just read it."
Okay, so since you know what show I'm talking about,
Yeah.
I've been having this argument with people,
Mhm.
people who think that John Richardson is funny.
All right. Now let me just make sure I know who you mean.
John with no H.
Oh, there we go. Let's get rid of that H.
Wears cardigans all the time.
John Richards. Oh, him.
Everybody seems to think that he's hilarious, and they laugh at him so hard on 8 out of 10 Cats, and I think that he's just absolutely awful.
I know his face, but I can't remember everything.
Oh,
He's
he's got a
funny.
stupid face. He's got a punchable face. He's got
Just
a
a
face that
sec.
just makes you want to
Let me
feed him like
just
20 of these.
let me just make absolutely certain that we're talking about the same guy. I'm going into the screen share.
Yeah, I don't want you to have imaginary violence being played out in your head on me beating up some other guy
Yeah.
who didn't deserve it.
Is this the guy you mean?
It's gonna take a while for
Yeah,
it to
it's going
pop
to take
up,
a few
I
seconds,
think.
but let's assume it is. If it is the guy, that guy, I've seen him in a couple of things, and I don't ever remember him saying anything that has been memorably funny to me.
Let's see. Uh, Maybe I don't.
Let's go
That
for
looks
a
like a
few more
GQ
pictures.
shot of him, with a pipe and everything. It looks
Yeah, that's
very
that's so
cosmopolitan.
that's why I picked that picture because he had the pipe. But I'm just
Oh,
going to
got
scroll
you, got
through a
you.
few more
Yeah,
pictures of him.
I think it is him. There's a lot of makeup and Photoshop done. He's really just awful looking.
Yeah, I've just it's awful. I've just scrolled.
He looks like he looks like your typical like whenever somebody 30 years ago thought of somebody British, you know, we're talking about somebody with a larger
Uh,
lower jaw, you know, like very really super stereotypical,
I've
you know.
just
That's
once
what
it
Jim
comes up
Richardson
on the
looks
screen,
like.
I've just scrolled through a few more pictures.
Yeah, that's him.
Yeah, that's him. All right, let's go back to the fancy view. There we go.
Wait, is that him? Oh yes, yes, yes. That is him.
Yep.
That is him. That's Sean Locke. Sean Locke is hilarious.
Yeah. Now he, I don't think I remember ever hearing him say anything memorably funny, but I may have got a chuckle or two occasionally.
Man, they think he's so funny on 8 out of 10 Cats. They laugh at him so hard, and he does like back to back jokes. Like usually people, they'll throw Jimmy a one liner and then they'll leave it and
Yeah.
go on to somebody else. But no, John's got to pull them out. 3 or 4 at a time, and it's just like none of them are funny.
Oh dear.
It's awful. I'm sorry. That's probably a weird thing to bitch about, but
No,
I hate it
I'm with you.
when
I'm
people
with
laugh
you on
at shit that's not funny.
that. But you
Wait,
know,
if I don't find it funny, you can't laugh at
well,
it.
humor's subjective, and everyone has their own taste in humor, but that's just wrong.
Yeah, I mean, some people have bad taste, you know.
Oh. Yeah, I know what you mean. Now,
Um,
my humor, I I like several different. Oh dear, I've just glued a load of stuff together on my desk, fiddling with a tube of super glue. Just ignore that. Anyway, my humor is a bit eclectic. I quite like various different areas of humor. I like silly humor, and I also like really dark humor.
yeah, I
Uh,
like dry, like Parks and Rec kind of
yeah.
thing.
Yeah. I like the Parks and Recreation humor, but I also like you know when something absolutely disastrous and tragic happens, but it's presented in a way that makes it amusing. I really enjoy that.
Absolutely.
I think it's partly because part of one of my main coping mechanisms for if things go wrong is I make it into a joke and I laugh about it.
Well, it's like they inspecting a truck and find some 55-gallon drums in the back, and you open up one and open up all of them, and you turn to them to tell on the ground to report what you found, and say, the, the only thing worse than 10 bodies in a barrel, and they say what? And you say one body in 10 barrels.
Yep, that's exactly the kind of humor I like. It's the same sort of thing as I was at a funeral a while ago, and right as it was very clearly deliberate. The vicar, or padre or priest or whatever the
Hmm.
appropriate term for translation is right as he said, "May the grace of God enfold you." The little the electric curtains um, started moving to enclose around the coffin. As soon as the guy said "enfold," he said the word "enfold," and the curtains started going. And I just started laughing at this funeral. I thought it was hilarious that that they timed it so that when he said "enfold," the curtains started moving. They're
Oh
like
my god.
fucking shit. This is a funeral. I gotta stop laughing.
We well, it's kind of like an old fashioned funeral. Like, it's a really small town where I grew up and where my grandpa died, and uh, I was one of the pallbearers, and the pallbearers, it was kind of tradition to use the ropes to lower the uh, the casket into the ground, and there'd be like posts that would be across the grave that the casket would sit on during the services, and then after everybody would leave, you would lift it up and remove the post and then lower it down to the ground using the ropes.
Okay.
And my little brother and my younger cousin were on one end, and uh, myself and three other of my cousins, of the older cousins, were on another end, and just try to get two of them to move down to help them because
Hmm.
they were smaller, and they said no, we need to evenly distribute the weight. It's like, no, they're weak and they're all on one side, so we can't do that. Well, long story short, my grandpa got dropped head first into his hole.
Whoops.
Yeah. And whenever that happened, like it landed in such a way where the head went in and the bottom couldn't, hit the bottom. It
Yeah.
leaned up against the edge,
Yeah.
and uh, one of my cousins fell into the hole, like tried not to, but ended up falling into the hole on top of the casket and sliding down to the end,
Oh
and just
dear.
looked up, and he's wearing black pants and a white shirt with a black bolo tie and a black jacket and a black
Yep.
cowboy hat. which he
Hmm.
wasn't wearing anymore because it had fallen off. And
Hmm.
he just looked up at us, and we just all busted out laughing. We laughed for like a solid 5 minutes.
Oh, outstanding. Yeah,
It was a great moment that we
that's
never told
exactly
anybody about.
that's
Oh
exactly
shit!
the kind of thing. Apart from that, yeah, I'll tell you one quick moment.
I hope my
For
family doesn't
me,
watch this.
well, my sister might. What was I going to say? Yeah, my grandparents were cremated. Um, we had my granddad's ashes in an urn, and my grandmother. This was before she was cremated. She decided that she wanted granddad's ashes to be tipped into the river going out to sea near where they would always go walking and where they'd been in the Royal Naval Auxiliary Service. So the boats would go out through there, and they had a very strong connection with this area. So my grandmother wanted my granddad's ashes tipped into the sea there. So me and my uncle went out to do it, and sort of there was a guy just fishing there, and we just look at him and it's, you all right there? You caught anything? He's like, nah. You're not fishing now, just tipping Grandad in the sea. He kind of looks away awkwardly, like, okay. We're just there with this little urn of ashes, and we kind of try to have this reverent moment, and then we tip the thing in, and the wind picks up, and he blows Grandad in our faces. We're just there like, oh fucking thanks, Grandad. You know?
Just this is one last one. Just there you go.
Yeah,
It's
you
going away
got
present.
us.
That's hilarious. That's a good memory. It's an equivalent, I'd say, of dropping your grandfather head first into his hole. Yeah.
Yep. Same kind of thing, and that's the kind of humor that I like. But I really enjoy just really dark humor about things where there isn't going to be a happy ending to it, and you know there isn't, but you make a joke out of
Yeah.
it anyway.
I used to tell an awful joke. Well, whenever I hear somebody talking about like the Holocaust or about like Auschwitz or something like that, I'll say, "Hey, that's not funny. Don't joke about that. My grandfather was in Auschwitz,
Hmm.
and he died." And they said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, what happened? Did he get burned or did he get gassed or what?" And said, "No, he
Yeah.
fell from a guard tower."
Yeah. Okay.
It's awful. Just
There's
awful.
my neighbor stopped talking to me for like 6 months because I told a joke that a guy I used to work with told me. The guy I used to work with is a German chap, and he's got very dark humor. I think because he's actually quite depressed. But
Oh, that's bad. He's
you
got
know
good meaning.
you know how being depressed makes your humor go like extremely dark. His
Yeah.
humor went that way, but he could still be quite funny at times, as long as you weren't working with him, which I was quite a lot. So when you're working with him, he was a bit of a dickhead. Anyway, uh, we were in the cash office, which once you're in the cash office, if you open the safe, you can't open the door because one has to be locked before you open the other, according to procedures, so you can't steal the money.
Hmm.
So we're in there, we're locked in the rooms, the safe's open, and he just farts massively and stinks out the entire room. But we can't leave because the safe's open.
Oh, jeez.
And then he's a German chap, and he's got the distinct German accent, and he just
So you
looks at
didn't
me.
apologize for it at all, I'm
No, he didn't
guessing.
apologize for it at all, and he looks at me. And this is the joke that made when I retold it, made my neighbor stop talking to me for 6 months. I said to him, this is not my joke. It's a bit dark, and he goes, "It's fine. I work on building sites. I've heard all the dark jokes." And I go, "All right." So this German guy, he farts massively, stinks out the whole room, and he looks at me and says, "Well, this is just like with the Jews." And I was like, "Fucking Jesus Christ, man!"
Oh, jeez.
And then after that, my neighbor stopped talking to me for 6 months.
Oh, man.
I mean, yes, it's a dark
I mean,
joke.
yeah, I mean it is, but I mean, I've heard like way worse. Like, do you know how you keep a baby from crawling around in circles on the floor?
Now go on.
You take the nail out of its hand.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of similar baby ones.
Well, my favorite one, because in high school, baby jokes were like all the rage. Was well, I had two favorite ones. My first one was how many babies does it take to paint a wall? And
Yeah,
it says depends on how hard you throw them.
yeah.
And the other one was uh, what did the baby look like when you put it feet first into the blender? And you say, I don't know. I was in the corner masturbating.
Okay. Yeah, you got some dark humor going on there. There's very few things in humor that actually shock me these days, but there are a few. But I don't know what they're going to be until I come across
Yeah, I don't know that I have any boundaries when it comes to jokes, but like I said, it's
them.
all
No.
in the intent. We have a rule in my family. Well, it wasn't in like my family when I was a kid. It's in my family now that if it's funny, you can say it. So like I will allow cursing if it's funny and necessary
Yeah.
for it to be funny.
Mhm.
So it's always like, can I say a cuss word? It's like it better be funny.
Yeah. No, I understand what you mean.
Yeah. So and there's a time for everything, and there's nothing better than a well placed and appropriate joke. I mean,
Yeah. No, I agree entirely. It's especially good if it helps diffuse a tense situation or helps bring humor to a sad situation.
and that is exactly when I do it and why I do it is because it just seems so bleak and glum and like it's just like no life and everybody's just blood. It's it'll hit me and I'll be like, I could not say this and everything would be fine, but I could say this, potentially upset some people, but
Hmm.
at least it would get some emotion, some reaction,
Yeah,
it
something
just
other than
a
just this
change.
dismal
Right.
feeling
Sometimes
of
any
just
change is a
yeah,
welcome change.
yeah. No, I agree with you, and it's it's where a lot of my humor kind of comes from. That sometimes my humor is. I also quite like just silly humor sometimes, but that's really circumstantial. It if things are, I think that's is partly a feature of my I'm I'm sort of mildly on the autism spectrum, so I take things a little more literally than the average person.
I see.
If humor is too off the wall, it loses me, and I'm there like, okay, I don't see how these things are connected, so it's not funny to me.
Like too abstract.
Yeah, if it's too abstract, it just doesn't do anything for me. It's the same with abstract art. If it's too abstract, it doesn't do anything for me because you might as well have just thrown a bucket of paint on the wall.
I got you.
I forgot where I was going with this. Humor
Mildly on
that's
the
off the wall.
autism spectrum.
Yeah, but certain absurd humor is just absolutely hilarious to me. Have you seen Star Trek Deep Space Nine?
I don't think I've seen that one, no.
Okay, you've seen Next Generation?
Unfortunately.
You know Chief O'Brien is usually in the transporter room.
Right, right.
He's in Deep Space Nine as well, and he's a much more major character in Deep Space Nine. One of the things he keeps doing is you see him several times throughout the series appearing in sick bay on Deep Space Nine with a shoulder injury from kayaking on the holodeck. And every time he comes in, it's like, oh, my shoulder again. Kayaking injury, yeah. So at one point he walks in and Odo is the sort of the straight man security officer on the station. Just he walks in and Odo's, let me guess, kayaking.
That's ridiculous. That's like it's
But
that's almost like you need context.
yeah, but the joke for me and a friend of mine with the absurdist humor is that we have the USS O'Brien, because the spaceships, the starships in Star Trek are USS whatever. We have the USS O'Brien. It's shaped like a kayak,
Oh, geez.
and then you have the USS Kayak. and it's shaped like an O'Brien.
That sounds like a great conspiracy theory if I've ever heard one.
And that's the kind of absurdist humor I like, but it has to you have to understand the context before you understand the joke, and it's the link to the prior context that makes it funny to
Right.
me.
I, inside jokes are my favorite thing, and if I have like an inside joke with a person, like I feel like that really it almost bonds me closer to them. You know, just because you share something with them that you don't
Yeah,
with
yeah,
anybody else,
I agree.
and with it being linked with humor, I think it's really it sounds crazy, but I think it's a really powerful
Yeah,
thing.
no, I agree entirely. There's a thing. There's a live stream I did a little while ago. There it is. We're playing. It's me and a friend of mine. It's the same friend actually. We're playing a game called Hold Fast Nations at War. It's set. It's like a 15th century setting where everybody's wearing like the they've got muskets and flintlock pistols, and they're like going being all imperialistic all over the world. It's like a team based shooter game, but the guns have accurate reload times and stuff like that. So you shoot, you're there for like 30 seconds reloading the fucking thing. So
Gotcha. Yeah.
it's a hilarious game, even though it's actually quite accurate in terms of a lot of aspects of it. But it's just hilarious because of how fucking awkward everything is.
Oh,
But
I think I have to refresh myself on that.
the in joke, well, one of the in jokes that was part of this live stream is the title of the live stream. It was me and a friend of mine playing this game, and there's because a lot of the dialogue, the vocal lines said by the different characters in the game. If you uh, if you're in a game and you've got like voice chat options, but rather than
Hmm.
talking down the microphone, you can select sort of pre-recorded things for the characters in the game to say, like so you can direct your team, like raise the sails or whatever if there's sailing involved.
Right.
There's a load of like just taunts and stuff you can say in the game, and if you're playing as a faction, like if you're playing as the French or if you're playing as the Prussian Empire, for example, they are in the language native to that faction.
Oh,
I don't
cool.
speak those languages, so I'm only hearing them phonetically. So what I have written down as the title for that stream is Long Lieberdick Kurdish, because that's what it sounds like.
Huh.
I have absolutely no idea what it actually is saying, but me and a friend of
That's
mine just we
interesting.
kept hearing that vocal line because of the team we were playing as. So we just set that as the title because it sounded funny.
That's how I learned Spanish.
Yeah,
Actually, I didn't know how many Spanish words were spelled. I learned Spanish through immersion,
yeah.
essentially. Pero sabes español como fluente ahorita, o más o menos fluente. Puedo hablo más o menos todo, pero solo puedo
Yeah.
escribir un poco. But I can write a little bit, but I understand all Spanish. I can speak Spanish. I can pass off as a native in most cases.
Oh,
Uh,
fabulous.
but it's I learned from like there were so many mistakes I made. Like some things that I thought were one word were actually two or three words, and some things
Oh
that I
yeah.
thought were started with an A, really started with an H, and it was really spelled and even said completely differently properly, but they would be speaking in a colloquial
Yeah. But you were saying it how you'd heard it.
kind of form, right? Right, just real lax and laid back, real lazy
Hmm.
Spanish. Um, like kind of like you do with your like you were talking about with your accent, you kind of drop some of the syllables and
Yep.
you don't enunciate as much, and
Well,
so a lot of that was lost
depending
in
on which
translation.
version
Like
of the
I
accent
could
I'm
speak
doing.
it
Yeah.
fluently, and it even helped my accent. Like I developed the accent because I
Hmm.
learned it that way, and and but I couldn't write it for shit to begin with.
Because you'd learned it spoken, and you'd learned it
Yep.
spoken by hearing it being spoken fluently rather than hearing it
Right.
spoken correctly.
Right. But I gained the accent and the cadence, you know.
Yeah, yeah. No, I understand where you come from there. I've got kind of similar things with not languages but different accents because I've been around a little bit in the UK, so I've picked up different accents by hearing them. There are elements of a northern accent in my accent, even though I'm very decidedly southern, purely from watching Red Dwarf a lot as a child and
Hmm.
taking on elements of Dave Lister's speech in how I would speak.
Interesting. Like the sayings or just like the
Just
accent.
just certain words and certain sounds. Like if I say the word northern, I say it a little bit more like a northern person would say it.
Yeah, you kind of draw it out.
Yeah. And there's a certain just particular way of saying that or part of northern that is in my voice more like how a northern person says it.
Like less vowels.
It's difficult to describe because I struggle to say it a different way. But I
Northern.
suppose if I was saying it more in the southern way, it would be there'd be a much more emphasis on the R, so there'd be more
Right.
northern. Whereas,
Northern.
yeah, how a northern British person would say it would be northern.
Right.
There's less R and there's more O.
Right. More vowels.
Yeah. So that's yeah. So there's little bits of that. I understand where you come from, but with you, it's you've got an entire language from just hearing people speak it, and yeah. So
Right.
I know what you mean, but I don't have quite that level of experience with it.
I had an experience one time where I was at a lake and it was 4th of July weekend and we were barbecuing and this Puerto Rican family. When I say family, I mean there were 15 of them. When I say Puerto
Yeah,
Rican, I mean they were from Puerto Rico,
yeah.
and they set up behind us. And they had a generator and they played, played a lot of cumbia music. And I love dancing cumbia, and so like I kind of I love Spanish culture. I love
Yep.
Spanish, and so I kind of snuck in there, and they were speaking all Spanish. I didn't know if any of them knew English, and so I introduced myself in Spanish and everything. And
Mhm.
uh, being the hospitable people that most Spanish people are, they
Mhm.
invited me into their camp and fed me their barbecue, and we danced and danced with some really really beautiful women. They got me drunk, and but somewhere along the way, the father of the family, almost the oldest, they had grandparents there, but he was like the patriarch, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
He asked me, he said, "Estoy cubano?" Like he asked me if I was Cuban, and I said no. And he said, "De veras? Like really? Like you're not Cuban?" Like, no, I'm not Cuban, And he's like, well, where are you from? I said, Texas, here. And he said, Estoy güero? Like, he's like, you're a white boy? And I'm like, yeah, I'm a white boy. And he's like, no mames way. And it's like, don't say that. Like, there's no way. There's no way. I was like, you've got to be Cuban. Like, they've been talking amongst themselves, like trying to figure out where I was from. Like,
Yeah.
almost placed some bets. Like some people thought I was from Cuba. Some people thought I was from Juarez. Some people thought that I
Yeah.
was from like Chihuahua. And I was like, no, man, I'm a white boy from Texas.
Yeah, it's just you didn't have that kind of stigma for learning the language, so you kind of
Right.
just blend in with the
Well,
culture when you
well,
want to.
my dad, he operated. Well, he would buy a mountain essentially, and he would quarry it for stone, and he would palletize the stone and then ship it out. And he hired a lot of immigrant workers, and
Oh yeah.
they stayed at a we offered them a bunkhouse on our property, and there's anywhere between 8 and 20 people that would come in and and work there and stay there and live there.
Oh yeah.
And one of my very first friends, his name was Esteban. He taught me how to play soccer.
Mhm.
He taught me how to speak Spanish. Well, my introductory Spanish classes. So much about the culture and a lot of my biggest influences in my life and like in my learning and in my development of my own self, not just a reflection of my parents, was from these immigrant workers. Um, Manuel, Hector. There were
Yeah.
several of them that were very influential. I mean, like to the point to where some of them, uh, I I keep in contact more with them than I do with my own dad.
Yeah. So you've got kind of a really deep connection to that culture.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
really do. I don't know how many quinceañeras I've been to. I don't know. I don't know how many of my old Mexican friends or my Mexican friends' dads have begged me to marry their daughter. I've been to Mexico many times. One time in the trunk of a car. Um,
Oh,
uh,
okay.
by my own doing.
Was that to get across the border?
Yeah. It wasn't because like get in the trunk, no,
Yeah.
it wasn't anything like that. And I've I don't yeah, I really enjoy the culture and like how you were talking about different cultures, they have different ways of expressing themselves,
Yes.
emotionally.
Yep.
The
Yep.
the the culture, the Mexican culture that I grew up in and around was both extremely judgmental
Yeah.
and extremely um welcoming and loving and tolerant. They made it known that they were against certain things, but
Yeah.
they would never turn away somebody because they did that or they were that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I understand. What you mean. They would tell you they didn't approve,
Yes.
but
Yeah,
they
and
wouldn't.
they wouldn't
They'd still
necessarily
invite
harp
you to the
on you
barbecue.
about it, right? They harp on you about stuff that's not really uh, uh, deals with that doesn't really deal with morality. Things like um, uh, why why haven't you eaten today? Like, why are you so skinny? Or like, why aren't you
Yeah.
married yet? Or
Okay. Yeah, I'm with
yeah, the things like that. Just there's a lot of teasing, a
you.
lot of good natured ribbing, and like lighthearted things like that, and very very little confrontation.
Hmm.
And when there is, it's usually tequila induced.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you. Now, there's an element. There's a similarity to British culture there, or at least the British culture that I'm more from. Let me tell you kind of the divide between it. I have experienced both kind of the extreme end of poverty not in terms of being in it myself, but knowing people who are very deep into it, and I've also experienced quite the other end of society in terms of the much more affluent areas of society where everyone's quite well off and they're very proud of that fact. And I've experienced them very close to each other, interacting with each other. I found that the people who are quite well off in British society tend to be less kind and less welcoming. And the way that manifests itself, at least in where I grew up, was that the people who were more well off would judge you quietly from behind a smile.
But was it a genuine smile, or was it a smile that you knew that it wasn't like this smile's not for you?
I was never able to tell at the time due to my difficulties with body
Oh,
language,
true.
but now that I look back on it, I could see that a lot of the smiles weren't genuine. That they'd be there, kind of. There'd be a public face that they'd put on. This partly comes from the Christian background in terms of the village I grew up in had a church that was the center of the village, not physically the center, but the center of the village activities, and it was a bit culty. There was the school there was a Church of England aided school, and it was aided by the local church, and so the church officials were often also the school officials or very closely linked to. There was a bit of cultishness in terms of who they would allow to be part of the community events and who they wouldn't, and
Mm.
how they expected people to behave. Um, and there was a lot of quiet judging from behind smiles, so that there'd be the acting as you're supposed to act with the polite smile, but also just kind of then going home afterwards and saying to your significant other, "What an absolute cunt that person is." You know, you see how they were behaving there. You know, they baked a cake with the wrong kind of flour or something, whatever. Some stupid. They've got the wrong kind of hedge, you know.
Right. That's one thing that I never really noticed. Like I never really noticed like the behind the scenes gossip afterwards. Like the for me, like what I noticed the most was uh, the biggest the biggest source of pride came from family, and
Yeah,
like and that's what means more than anything to them. So they don't publicly badmouth their family. They rarely talk about it even behind closed doors. It's like kind of a known thing that nobody
yeah,
talks about. And if anybody else talks about it outside of the family, well, take that as an insult, and we're going to kick
yeah.
your ass.
It there's a, there's a lot of elements in British culture. There's a lot of toxic elements where it's kind of there's hostility just between people within families. Like there's always that there's sort of one little side of the family will have obviously concealed hostility for other sides of the family. Like in the case of
Mm.
my family, it manifests itself between my mum's side and my dad's side, although not actively hostile, but there's just an element of they're not the same, and they don't really want to be associated with each other, generally speaking.
Is it usually
Uh,
like that, like across marriages?
Not always, but sometimes, yes. But there were just certain elements, like with my uncle, my aunt, formerly my aunt, she's not my aunt anymore because they're divorced now. But my
The
uncle,
artist, the artist formerly known as Ant.
yeah, he married the, this woman after a quite tragic death of his previous wife because he couldn't. It basically came down he couldn't bear to be alone.
Hmm.
But she kind of came in and kind of cut him off from a lot of other aspects of his life, although he didn't realize it until a lot later. But there was there was in that instance there was as close to open hostility between my grandmother and her as you can get, and that became actually very open later in my grandmother's life when she developed dementia, and she would
Hmm.
forget who was in the room with her.
Oh, geez,
And
that's awful.
it once happened. uh, that aunt was in the room, and my grandmother had forgotten she was in the room, and she said to my uncle about his wife because referring to my mother, saying, "Ah, well,
Oh,
this person's mother thinks your wife's a gold digger,"
that's one of those funny moments
and
that's not supposed to be
she was
funny.
fucking standing right there.
That's great. That is so dark. Wow.
There were funny elements because me and my mum became my grandparents' carers. So there were funny elements of dealing with kind of dementia, but it got more and more sad as it went on. But there were still funny elements of it, even right towards the end of it. But where was I going with this? The hostility between families that there became because my grandmother had kind of been kind of like the matriarch of that side of the family, so she would always include everyone as much as she could and organize huge parties for everybody there, and there'd be because they came from a much less affluent background, there'd be the much more open emotional openness and just sharing of resources and emotion with each other because the ability to pay for distance allows people to become a lot more emotionally withdrawn in British society.
I mean,
Um,
that makes sense.
yeah, and that's something that if you can pay for emotional distance from people, people tend to do that. They will go, right, I don't need to talk to these people, so I'm not going to.
Hmm. Right. Like it's if it's not providing me any benefit, then
Yeah.
well, I hate to cut this short. I really loved our discussion, but I am exhausted. I'm
Yeah.
about to pass out.
It's getting pretty late here as well, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Yeah, but were there any other questions in the chat?
Let's have a quick glance through just in case.
I don't want to think anybody
Uh,
got gypped.
oh no, that's your comment. At Jesus is Lord, you were so nice earlier. What happened?
I mean,
By the way, if you're still there, Jesus Lord, and you fancy having a chat about what my view of Trump is, I'd be willing to do
maybe about why you're so angry at people who disagree.
that. I think we're out of questions for now. Let me just check. Oh, why did Daddy Mustache grow the classic supervillain mustache?
Oh, I took a shower just before the show and I didn't wax it. This is all natural.
Oh, Jesus Lord is still here. He says the truth is not nice when you're an atheist.
What? What?
I don't even know. Just I'm I'm getting
You're
I've had enough. I'll translate
you're
it another
right.
time.
Well, if being a Christian means that I see Donald Trump as an intelligent, well established leader, then I'll be an atheist. Thank you.
Oh dear. But yeah, Jesus Lord, if you fancy having a chat
But
about that at a time when I
much
haven't
love,
just
everybody. I
yeah.
have no hate for anybody. Even
Yeah.
Jesus is Lord. Love you,
If
man.
if you fancy having a chat about that at a time when I haven't just had a quarter of a bottle of whiskey, that'd be great. So, yeah. Oh, Rory Herbert, I have two questions for Bad Tim and Badger. Go on, what do you got, Jam? And while we're here,
Yeah.
I shall ask you a quick question, which is, when you left Christianity, did your political affiliation change?
No, my political affiliation changed before I left Christianity. I was raised extreme right wing conservative. I mean, extreme right wing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I started to shift, I guess, at about 22, 23.
Okay. So that did that coincide with the kind of thinking of let's get words to come out of my mouth in a coherent fashion, shall we? Did that kind of coincide with your deconversion in a sense, or was that a separate thing?
Yeah, my deconversion was something that I'd say took 10 plus years. Um, from the time that I noticed that what I was being preached in the church, what I was being taught in the church by the church leaders wasn't what I was getting from reading the Bible. And
Yeah,
so up until the point of where I decided that um, God is either everything or nothing. It's completely ambiguous, and that nothing that the Bible says about God can possibly be true. And so I immediately left Christianity. Then, well, I struggled with Christianity for a while, but that's essentially what the process was over the 10 years. But no, I don't think that it really coincided with it. I guess you could say that it overlapped with my early years of intense study, like where it was purposeful study of the Bible for the purpose of discovering who God really was,
mm-hmm.
or if he even existed. And from the very beginning, I left that option open. I never restricted myself to just God existing. Not once I started exploring, but before that, I was very fundamental. Like, no, God exists. There is no other option. Atheists don't exist. Uh, but I distinctly remember very early on, in my late teens, um, saying, if God doesn't exist, if that's a conclusion that I come to, then so be it. Because whatever
Yeah.
conclusion I come to, I'm going to come to honestly. I'm not going to disregard anything. I'm not going to um, give anything higher authority simply because it confirms my comfort. You know,
Yeah, and I think that kind of the ability to mature past just believing what you're told throughout your life is kind of an important development step. Um, you need to be able to be intellectually honest with yourself, and that's a big step into becoming more able to actually interpret the world honestly.
absolutely. Rory, I'm a 32, 30 on a good day in the waist, and a 34 on the inside leg.
30 on a good day.
Yeah,
Rory,
those are few and far between.
I will get back to you on that in my sense because I actually need to check where you're supposed to measure yourself for waist measurements. And I don't have those things to hand right now, so I will message you later.
How do you size your trousers?
Uh, I look at the ones I already have that are comfortable.
And you don't know what size they are?
Not memorized, no.
Interesting. I've been the same size for, gosh, years. So yeah, it's kind of hard. I just buy the same size. I haven't bought a size 30 waist in a long time, but I do have an old pair that, if I'm, looking particularly good in the mirror that day, I'll try to squeeze my ass into them.
Oh yeah. Well, here's the thing with me. I buy trousers in bulk. I about a few years ago, I went and I bought a load of cargo trousers with smart looking pockets that are quite flat lying. And I went and I bought them in bulk. I found a size that fitted me and were comfortable, and I just went and I bought like 4 pairs of them, and I've been wearing those for years.
Nice. You
So
should probably wash those at some point.
I do wash them. That's why I have 4 pairs of them.
Are you scared to take them off?
No, I just when one pair's dirty, I chuck them in the wash, and then I put another identical pair on.
Oh, I thought you were saying that you've been wearing them for years.
No, yeah, I wear 4 pairs of trousers at all times, and I've never taken them off in the last 5 years.
Well, that explains your little tissy with the climate control. Like, you don't like stores that are too warm because you're wearing 4 pairs of trousers. It's probably got to be.
Well, there's an element of that, but that's actually oh dear, that's actually more with the top half because I tend to the bottom half is fairly consistent in terms of layer count. I wear just the one layer
So
usually, but I tend to layer on the top half. Like I don't feel comfortable going outside unless I'm wearing something and a jacket.
so on the innermost of the 4 trousers that you wear, what size is that one?
That one is medium.
He's
I don't know. They're not in reach at the moment. I'm wearing pajama trousers right
man of mystery.
now. Absolutely. Well, you see me here wearing a smoking jacket and smoking my cigar. I am an international man of mystery who doesn't leave the country.
Rory, I surprisingly can still fit my
Whoops.
my dress blue pants, and well, my top actually I've gotten a little bit beefier than well, not really more muscle. I've just same muscle, just added fat to it. Uh, uh, so I don't know if I can still fit in the top, but I can still button up all 13 buttons. The I don't know if you know the navy dress blues. The buttons, they button up in like a uh, they button up on three sides with two 90-degree angles. So it's like the top of the square and the sides, not the bottom, and it folds out.
Okay.
And we call it the marine serving tray.
Oh, outstanding.
Yeah.
I love these. I really enjoy just little things that come from kind of how things are made. You know, just little colloquial kind of names for things that come from the shape or function or form or something like well, like that. But I'm trying to think of a good example from
Where
something
do you
that now
think
I can't think of
where do you think the name dildo comes from?
one. I don't know. I do not know. But
It,
I do like when they did like a little comedy spoof of Lord of the Rings. They called him Dildo Baggins.
that's funny. I don't know if you knew, but in colonial America, it was common for people to take last names that reflected their occupation, like Baker or Smith or things like that. Did you
Yeah,
know that?
yeah, yeah. I did know a little bit
Do
about that.
you know what John Hancock did?
Go on. I can guess from the name, but go on.
I, I don't know. I think he like made saddles or something.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
Maybe that reflected his pastime, like his. I don't know.
Oh, he'd been performing the sin of what did that guy call it? Greek vice, he called it.
Did you hear
No,
about
that's being
the
gay. Never mind. Carry on.
Did you hear about that psychic? I'm going to use an offensive term because I don't know what else to use in this joke. Did you hear about the psychic midget who escaped prison?
Go on.
It's a small, medium, at large.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Did you hear about the clairvoyance convention?
Clairvoyancy badge.
No, the clairvoyance convention.
Oh, convention.
Yeah,
Oh
it was
no.
cancelled due to unforeseen circumstances.
Oh jeez, how ironic. Did not see that one coming, Miss Cleo. Do you remember Miss Cleo?
I
I
I
don't know if you got
think.
the Miss Cleo commercials over there, but it's call me child. Like
Oh no.
uh,
I think I've seen a few clips, but I think I blocked them out. Like, no, please no. We've got Jesus Lord asking, ask Jim if he was ever filled with the Holy Spirit.
uh thought I was many times, yeah. First time when I was 14.
What do you attribute that to now that you don't have the same beliefs you did then?
Um, um, Multiple things, mostly a combination of mass hysteria and the observer effect. Um, just for one, being it's like being at a rock concert, and everybody starts rocking back and forth and chanting the last line to a song, and eventually you fall into this into the same pattern. You start swaying the same as everybody else. You start repeating the same mantra, and you enter this trance-like state. It's very, very euphoric. So it's a combination of something along the lines of that, and the fact that everybody is looking at you, expecting a response. So whenever somebody um, is anointing people with the Holy Spirit, person after person after person, you feel obligated to be anointed with the Holy Spirit. You feel obligated to reflect those same things. For instance, you won't go to a Baptist church and see somebody filled with the Holy Spirit and running up and down pews. You want to see that? You go to a Pentecostal church and everybody's doing it. Uh, but you won't see anybody receive the Holy Spirit who doesn't believe that the Holy Spirit
Okay,
exists.
yeah. There's one comment in the chat that I'm oop, clicked the wrong thing there. That I'm trying. I'm kind of reluctant to read because I don't want to be confrontational, but also I want to read because it's hilarious. Which is Orla says Jesus Lord, did you know that holy water lube is actually a product? Get some and make friends with a sock.
Oh yeah.
Now, I want to be clear. I'm reading it because it's funny, not because it's what I'm suggesting.
Hmm.
Anyway, oh, there was another question, but I can't find it. Oh, in response to the sizing questions, Orla says that's easy. Referring to me, you're the perfect size for me to awkwardly hug.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Um, and Rory asks Orla, can you explain why Badger has to rub his nether regions every time he takes a swig from his beer mug? That's not my nether regions, Rory. I have my trousers pulled up beyond them. That's actually just adjusting my jacket.
You see, one of the unfortunate things about being a badger is that when you get crabs, it's all over.
Oh dear. Yeah. Oh,
It's not just
actually,
in one
there's an
place.
interesting thing about the European badger. If you just give me one sec while I type this. Um, right. The interesting thing about the European badger is that we will do a bedding cleaning ritual, which involves that there is a particular parasite, which is it's a I think it's a type of flea that is specific to badgers, which lives in the bedding. So badgers will drag the bedding out of the burrow and leave it in the sun until all the fleas have been expired by being, exposed to the sun for a long period of time.
Hmm.
So perhaps I should drag my chair out into the sun.
Yeah. Maybe it's time for a little sunbathing.
Yeah, I think it might be, particularly now the weather's warming up. Actually, we're using the sun at the moment to dry out the roof of the shack, so because it's starting to go off.
Oh. All right. Well, I'm gonna head out before Jesus
Yep.
is Lord blows the gasket. It's too late for that.
I think so. I think it's about time we toodle off.
All right. I really appreciate you having me on here. I
Yeah.
had a good time.
No, I appreciate you coming on. It's been a lot of fun. We should do this again sometime. Maybe with like a topic pre-planned rather than just let's see where this goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love that. Yeah, I think we should definitely do that.
But yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
While we're here, let's do a quick shill of where we can find you. Where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Jim's Stash, STACH. You can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/Jim Majors. You can find me on Facebook at Jim Majors. Just Google Jim Majors, and you'll find me. For extra fun, Google Jim Majors debate. I have several, many, lots and lots and lots and lots of debates out there. Would love it if you guys would watch them. Would love it even more if you'd watch them on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Jim Majors.
Outstanding. Yeah, I actually with the debate with SJ that I did, I direct people to her channel purely because I I was using a really awkward method to broadcast it on both at the time, and it cut off like the last 10 minutes of the debate on my channel.
Oh, that's the worst, man. The closing, like in all the Q&A or what?
Oh, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it missed out some stuff, and it was all laggy. So I just thought, oh, yeah, I'll just direct them to SJ's channel. It'll be easier.
Oh, that's awful luck.
Rory, I would do a Badger after party, but it's fucking 3 a.m., mate. So I think we'll do it another time. Unless you particularly want to come on for a chat.
Yeah. Just me, you, and Jesus is Lord. Let's do that.
We could do that another time if you want.
Yeah, let's do that. Sounds like a party, but Jesus is Lord can't leave though. It's like a church lock-in.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah,
I would,
absolutely.
because I had an interesting discussion with Jesus a little while ago. Where we had a fairly friendly back and forth. It was quite pleasant, but it would be interesting if you like. I could even moderate a discussion where I'd try to make sure that I stay as neutral as possible and don't actually involve myself in the debate.
I mean, I'm down for whatever. Always willing to talk to whoever about whatever. I've never turned down a debate.
I could do like a setup like this, but with two screens and a fancy debate setup, and me sitting in the middle sipping my beer.
Sure. If you want to do it, Jesus is Lord, that'd be great. I know we were supposed to do it several times in the past, but never got to close that. But yeah, now's the time.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on, and thank you everyone for coming. Let's leave it there, and good night, everyone.
Thanks, Badgie.
All right.